He disappears. We'll be back.
All right, good afternoon, councillors, members of the public and members of staff to the council meeting today, 22nd of July. And, you know, I hope everybody has read the disclaimer that has been put up. And I'll commence the meeting with asking Councillor Nelson if he's...
No, I haven't got the sheet, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Andrews to do welcome of country, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respect to elders both past and present. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I'll read the civic prayer. Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility, we may promote the welfare of your people and advance the common good. Thank you. Apologies, I let all councillors know that Councillor Mark Ward still has a serious medical condition yesterday, and as such he is not present today. Can I ask somebody to move his apologies, please? Councillor Scandrett and Nelson, all in favour, against, carried. Now, the adoption of the previous minutes on the 8th of July, would somebody like to move the correctness of those minutes, please?
So moved.
So Councillor Whipper and seconded Councillor Andrews. Thank you. Put it, all in favour.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Question, Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, I left that meeting, or in fact, you took me out of that meeting last meeting because there was a matter of a code of conduct involving me, which I declared, but it's not in the minutes. There's no record of me leaving, being taken out of the meeting. Maybe the general manager could speak on this.
47.
Page, I've been told to go to page 47.
Yes. Now it says there, I left the chambers. I didn't. I was terminated from the chambers, and I didn't get the opportunity to speak. So it needs to be recorded.
It is the fact that you were excommunicated from the meeting for a period of time. So the broad aim of the minutes is to reflect the intent of the request or the intent of what happened.
Well,
so it is confirmed there that you left the chambers. Now we've got to put something in where we can put the meeting, but we are still trying to run this as formally as we can, and the terminology is chambers.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't agree with the terminology because you directed that I was taken out of the meeting before I could speak on the matter which involved me.
I will ask staff to give an interpretation of what you've just said.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I guess I'm on the minutes reflect what happened. Councillor Scandrett left the meeting. Now, whether he was assisted in that or because of the electronic meeting procedure, he left the meeting, and that's what the minutes reflect.
Well, Mr. Paul, that's not quite how I see it. I was terminated from the meeting at the press of a button. And I would like it recorded that Councillor Scandrett was taken out of the meeting, the time being 7:42.
Okay, then that will be recorded that Councillor Scandrett, as he had an interest under direction from the mayor, was left the meeting at 7:42.
Thank you.
What the minutes will reflect.
Thank you.
Put the minutes, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
That carried. So we move on to declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Scanlon.
Mr Mayor, in confidential agenda, item 19.1, compliance actions, notices and orders, update, April to June 2020. I'm declaring an interest in there because there's a mention of myself and a property that I own with my wife in there.
Okay, so that's your declaration of interest?
It's non-pecuniary, not non-significant as far as I can see. But
Right.
I'd be happy for the staff to correct me on that.
Can I ask the councillors with their declarations of interest, email it to council staff prior to the council meeting? And that will be again highlighted in this week's circular, that declarations of interest will be emailed to staff prior to the meeting, so they are not a political statement or whatever that is then submitted later.
Well, that's fine, Mr Mayor, but as you know, I asked just before the meeting started.
Thank you. You have your declarations noted. Any other? No other declarations are noted. So we move on to the mayoral minute. And I'll be happy enough to move that if I have a seconder. Councillor Nelson. Thank you. So is Councillor Turlin, you are muted yourself?
No, let's read the mayoral minute first because it's only been emailed to us early this morning and I can't, it keeps changing. What's happening here?
The mayoral minute as in up on the screen. So if there's no debate, then I will.
Oh, yeah, no debate.
I'll debate.
You go
Yeah.
first, I'll go second.
Okay. Look, Mr Mayor, I think, can you hear me? Yep.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Look, Mr Mayor, I think you could argue that you're stopping good governance. And I've always been a supporter of questions with notice in the business paper, as many councillors would know. But I find myself spending most of my time preparing to argue against the councillors that are putting the questions with notice up. And to me, that's not good governance. I believe I should be spending my time on the meat and bones of council's issues that are before us. So in this case, I'll support your motion because we'll probably have to have another meeting to clear the backlog. And particularly when a simple phone call or a councillor request would get the answer. So that's my position on it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Turlin.
Well, it's very interesting how you might say that. We are stifling free speech here. And the reason is because we don't have any input from the community anymore, unless they do it in writing. We are on Zoom at the moment, which makes it extremely hard for the community to even be involved if we can't go to the chamber. But on multiple occasions, I've written emails to the management with no response from the general manager and other parties within the council administration. I'll give you one, for example, here at the moment. In Station Street.
Councillor Turlin, there is a level that you can ask if it implies or infers on staff issues, make comment.
I am asking a question. I'm actually debating if you'd like to not intervene. At this point, I am making a statement that I have written emails to staff and had no comment back in relation to things that I want to know. So this question from Councillor Nelson saying just write to staff, I'll come back to you, it does not happen. We do not get the response we need. So we have to do questions with notice and notice of motions to get some reaction. As I was saying before I was interrupted by you, Mr Mayor, T158 and T159 are trees in Station Street which are on the plan to be kept. They were removed on the 1st of May, by memory. And I've been waiting for the Arbist reports. I'm just telling you, I'm waiting for the Arbist reports.
Councillor Turland,
This is nothing to say with wrong. This is why we put in questions with notice.
Debate.
It is exactly what the debate's about.
The debate is about limiting the number of questions or the notice of motion, not about an issue.
Well, it's about the issue about not being a response from council staff when I've asked questions.
Okay, then that's the issue.
If I can't get it from the staff through the proper manner, I will put a question with notice and a notice of motion. You are stifling free speech. And I believe this needs to go to the Ombudsman. Actually, I put an amendment in that your approach to what you're trying to put forward, not to the OLG, forget them, go to the Ombudsman to see if this is a credible motion that could even be put forward. Because when you think about it, Mr. Mayor, what you're doing is taking the position of the General Manager. The General Manager is the only one that can remove or put forward the motions or the questions of notice or notice of motions that councillors put forward. Not you.
Right,
Not you.
Councillor
Council
Turland, that
sets
is
the
incorrect.
policy of
I can put a notice of motion forward as much as you can. Right, councillor Halstead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I oppose this outright because it minimises the opportunity for democratically elected councillors to bring forward important matters only to be restricted by a hastily modified code of meeting practice, albeit allegedly allowable. Quite frankly, it's a concerted effort to muzzle councillors, manipulating the system that has already been placed on a public exhibition, one could say. I mean, you've already got a code of meeting practice and it's been drafted having close regard to what was the model code put out by OLG. And it does worry me, quite frank, that if you've already consulted with OLG, seems to me they'll be seen as a facilitator of the proposed policy change. I just asked the question then of them, how flexible can the model code be? I mean, quite frank, I've always supported the government on codes, not model codes, and then councils being able to then play with the model code. There should be one code in my view, and that'd be far better for them to pursue from a legal point of view. What worries me is the wider public should be made aware that the current council, via the bureaucracy and or yourself, I don't care, will change existing policy on the run to facilitate the erosion of the democratic process. I mean, I remember a statement made many years ago by a Prime Minister of this country that said, he used the term which has been very common ever since, reprehensible behaviour. I'm wondering if that's what this is, because I don't think you need to actually move this or adopt this or move forward with another change to an existing model, current code of meeting practice, which I think is quite adequate as it is. I'm just concerned that we'll be seen again as a council that's, flip-flopping all over the place as it sees a problem arise to accommodate some change in a policy. I would argue that if you look, for example, at the current agenda, that there's 5 of those notice of motions and or questions with notice that are follow on from the previous councils. There'll be those in the audience that'll probably indicate or other councils that that's as a result of previous meetings where they haven't been dealt with. Well, I'd say they should have been dealt with, but I'm one that's not hell bent on the 8 p.m. stop, and I think we should amend our code in that respect, or our policy resolution in that respect, because I think, quite frank, it wouldn't worry me if we went till 9 o'clock, if need be, in certain circumstances. So I'll leave my debate there. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Halstead. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor McLaughlin has dropped out. Councillor Scandred.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely oppose this as well. This is a gag upon free speech. We are elected councillors. I want to remind you all, and we're responsible to the electorate. And I agree with Councillor Halstead and Councillor Turland. Sometimes you have to bring things to the council for various reasons so that the public can see you are raising a matter that they want ventilated, or because you can't get an answer on it. I remember in the January, February scene, we had numerous questions with notice and notices of motion that were deferred. We just ran out of time in the meetings that were under your direction, Mr. Mayor. Somebody said to me they were filibustered. I said, don't be serious, that couldn't have been the case. But of course, that is where questions were very relevant. And so people need to have that. We've lost questions from the public in the chamber. That went a few years ago. We've lost a whole lot of liberties out there that the public expect. This is another. So I'm going to be completely voting against this. And I do agree with Councillor Halstead. If this matter has been discussed by you with the OLG, well, that is a great concern to me that the OLG have supported this.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. We are still waiting on Councillor McLaughlin. Any other speakers?
No, I've actually.
Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, ordinarily, I would agree that, we as councillors have the right to put in numerous notices of motions and questions with notice. However, of late, there really has, I think it's been overdone. I think there needs to be a bit of discipline shown by some of the councillors because it is dragging on and we're not completing our council business. We have limits under the Code of Meeting Practice, and we do, in fairness to the community, need to fit in with those timeframes as well. I'm just feeling that that some of these questions are, what can I say? Well, they're painful, really, if I'm being honest, and I don't think there's a need for that. And I think we can all limit. I've been on council quite a while, and it's very rare that any councillor would have more than 2 notices of motion and or 2 questions with notice. It's very rare. So if people can't discipline themselves to fit within the time frame of council meetings, that concerns me. And to say, that we're acting on behalf of the community, we are indeed acting on behalf of the community, but to hide behind the fact that the whole community wants councillors to put questions of notice forward, I'm not really sure that that's the case. So again, I think discrimination and discipline are the order of the day, Mr. Mayor. So in this instance, I don't see it as gagging. I see it as efficiency and getting through council meetings efficiently and to the point. So I'll be supporting the mayoral minute on this occasion.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, likewise, I'll be supporting this. As Councillor Whipper has said, there's been quite a few occasions where we haven't got through the business paper. What I find the best thing to do if you need a quick response is to actually get on the phone, call up one of the managers and ask them the question. I did it just this week and I got a quick response. Within 2 hours, the problem brought to me by the community member was solved. So, I don't think we have to put, and I think as Councillor Whipper said, 2, if every councillor put in 2, every council meeting, we'd be battling to get through them then. So it's not as if we're stifling debate or the community hasn't got a voice. So no, I think I've said enough. That I'll be supporting it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Look, I'll speak to it as a right of reply. The amount of business questions with notice and notices of motion have been extraordinary. I think up until March, there was something like 35 notices of motion and questions with notice. There is the time frame that senior staff are spending on these notices of motion and questions with notice, which have to be written because that's the nature of them. Whereas all the councillors who have made comment pick up the phone. You've got your general manager, your deputy general managers and managers who can give you the answer, and then if you're not happy with it that way, then it may have to come the extra step. But at this particular point of time, to get through the business paper, some of these, I think, of the questions that have come in are politically loaded. They are there to disrupt, and as such, we're not finishing. This meeting today should be all over in about an hour and a half. I bet you we're going to be here well after that, going through these notices of motion, which in my opinion need not be even in the business paper. All right, so we put the mayoral minute. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your card. So that's councillors Nelson, Andrews, Whipper, McLaughlin, and wherever mine is in favour as well. So I declare the motion carried. Those against, sorry, councillors Halstead, Gillen and Andrew. I declare the motion carried. We move on to 11.1, operations of the Shire's swimming centres.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, could we have those votes against recorded? Mine anyway.
The request is that, we have a public forum. And at this stage, it is Mr Paul Brady will be speaking in relation to the road closure in Mittagong. And Mr Brady, are you there? And I apologise for not being able to see you yesterday. There's just certain things occurred. So I apologise for that, but you have the right to commence your address as of now. Can you hear me, Mr Brady?
Yeah, you can, he's just got on mute.
Okay.
Sounds like he's muted, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
No, you're still muted, Mr Brady.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, is that better?
That's
Yeah.
better.
I apologise for that. I'm not very good with Zoom, so thank you for allowing me to speak briefly on this matter. I won't try and waste too much of your time. I did ask the lady at council that allowed me to speak at this meeting to put up some images which are basically just showing you the valuations from Knight Frank and from AP Cole Valuers, who have been working in the Southern Highlands for the last 40 years. There was only a couple of points I wanted to raise, and that was the fact that no other vehicle uses the road that we're trying to close. It has been our home's driveway for the last 50 years. We've only been here for about 4 though. Council does not receive any of the money paid for the road. I'm kind of I don't really understand why it's become such a major issue. However, once the road is amalgamated, assuming that it goes ahead, council will receive increased rates and levies. To date, we have paid over $15,000 in fees just to get to this point. And if we walk away from it, we lose that $15,000, which would be regrettable. We would ask that council accept the two values that we've got, 9,500 from Knight Frank and 9,900 from AP Cole. We'd like to pay, if possible, 10,000 plus GST plus fees, which would amount to a total for us of between $26,000 and $30,000, depending on what the legal fees are. And we respectfully ask council to put that forward and see if that's acceptable. I know that council won't receive any of the money for this, but it is in council's power to work on the valuations provided. I hope it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you very much, Mr Brady. Public forum, so everybody is reinforced, there is no questions. We now move on to council reports. And that is on page 2, 11.1, operations of the Shire's public swimming pool centres for the 2021 pool season. Council like an introduction, or are you happy to? And if you want, if I ask the question, just please use your card. So if there's no questions,
Move the motion.
Move the motion.
move councillor Turlin, seconded councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion? Put it, all in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Then we, 11.2, investment report. Any questions from councillors in relation to this?
So moved.
Move councillor Whipper, seconded councillor Nelson. Any comment? Put it, all in favour, against, carried. 12.1, page
Just-
30.
Just before you move forward, Mr Mayor, because I sort of half missed half the front of it, have you noted the apology of the General Manager today in this meeting?
No, I haven't. There is no need to note the absence of the General Manager. It's councillors whose apologies are received. 12.1, submissions to Office of Local Government on councillor superannuation discussion paper. Councillor McLaughlin,
Yeah, move that way, Mr Mayor.
seconded.
Seconded.
Question?
Okay, so we've got a motion being moved and seconded. Councillor Turlin.
On page 25, document 9.
Yes.
General purpose, which one is our fee that we've increased 2 weeks ago? Where it says general purpose council, non-metropolitan. Which one is our fees in here? I think it's wrong. Where it says 37 councils at 20,208, which is what we were, we are now 24,200 and something. This document is not correct.
Hang on, I'll get a correction for you.
Well, Mr Mayor, it's not a correction, it's a clarification. I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer, Mr Mooney, to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, this discussion paper was formally released by the Office of Local Government in March. The Local Government Remuneration Tribunal handed down their determination regarding the reclassification of fees. If memory serves me correct, in May, so there is a timing issue. This discussion paper, for all intents and purposes, is outdated.
So do we write back to the OLG or whoever and explain that this is out of date, page 25?
Through you, Mr Mayor, at the time of release, Councillor, it wasn't out of date. It's a timing issue that the Office of Local Government have allowed councillors sufficient time to respond. It's not an error, it's a timing issue.
Okay, so we're only commenting on the official release from the Office of Local Government. Councillor.
Yeah, but it's misleading to the public because it's not the right figures. That's what I'm trying to get at. Somebody needs to explain it to correct this page for the public, for new councillors that might wish to take up the role.
Mr Mayor, if I may, Councillor, what Mr Mooney has said, this is an historical document. At the time, they were accurate. And like anything, as time moves on, things change. So the document is a historical document in the sense that it doesn't reflect the current situation. Obviously, if there is a means to provide superannuation to councillors, it'll reflect the remuneration of those councillors at the time.
Okay, councillor, where's councillor Halstead? He had his hand up. He's gone. While we're waiting for councillor Halstead to come back, Mr Mooney wants to make a clarification as well.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and obviously acknowledging that we are in debate. Councillor, for clarification.
We're not in debate yet, we are still taking questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, on page 16 of the report, under the council budget implications, the figure that is provided there has been updated to reflect the decision of council from 2 weeks ago. So the amount shown there is $26,500. We have updated that figure to reflect the decision from 2 weeks ago. So that is a true and accurate reflection of the cost should council or should the Office of Local Government move forward with the option that council is supporting tonight.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it. I'm just saying, should we not inform the OLG to correct their paper, which is what they put out in March to 2020, that all councils have now changed, or more than not likely, changed the figure on page 25. It's not reflected in their discussion paper. It needs to be right.
Right, well, you've made your point, councillor Turlin, and that's all I can say. You've made your point. Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll be voting against this because I don't see it as a necessary component of all the reasons put previously that might attract people or other people, younger people and all the rest of it that may need some sort of top up of their wages to support the position. But, you know, to me, it's all about service to the community. I realise it's a paper and it's a matter we're commenting on, but I'm just putting the point very clearly here. I oppose it and will vote that way.
Point taken. There is still a long way to go and council is just endorse the draft submission. Councillor Scandal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll be opposing this. This is a job, essentially you volunteer for this role, the way it's structured at the moment. And I don't believe that a small amount of superannuation is going to tempt people into a 4-year commitment to serve. That commitment has to come from within, not from within the pocket. I'll be voting against it. And I think that we will have to revisit this in due course, because eventually the role of councillors and the mayor will have to be revised. For example, do we need, in fact, a popularly elected mayor? I say we do.
Okay, well, thank you, councillor. You're making a comment. Now, look, we are questioning as opposed to making. Councillor Scandrett has now commenced the debate. So can I ask that until questions are finished, have we got one more question? Councillor McLaughlin, or is it?
No.
No.
Yeah, no, not a question. I was going to, in debate, I moved this, I was going to speak to it.
Right, you have the right to speak to it now.
Yeah. Look, councillors, it's okay for us retired gentlemen to sit around and who are probably have got their superannuation all organised or what have you, but just think for a while about young people that need to come on in working age, and especially women who we know that retire with a lot less money than anyone else, the males of the same age. So I'm suggesting that all other levels of government get superannuation. For someone to give up their time, as Councillor Scandrett said, a volunteer, okay, a volunteer, but why should they, how do we encourage younger people, and especially women, to put their hand up and sacrifice time, childcare, the whole bit, to be on council? It's not about the money, but surely they shouldn't be penalised by coming on council. If we want to see young working class people of working class age come on council, I think you've got to realise that this is something that needs to be supported. It's not a great impost on the community. Spread over all of council is $26,000. You know, it's a drop in the ocean for an organisation of $150 million organisation to spend that amount of money to support superannuation. And when you look at some councillors that might spend 3 or 4 terms on council, it adds up to quite a bit of money. So it's not for me, and it's probably not for any of us who are on council at the moment. And I appreciate that. But I think things will change. And if we want young people to give up time to come onto council, they must be compensated, not penalised, to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Then the only comment I will make is what Councillor Scandrett said, and that is times are changing and we may have to revisit this. Well, we are making a move to support some variation. Things move on. Things move on. Okay, so I put the recommendation as moved by councillor
McLaughlin.
Councillor McLaughlin and Whipper. All in favour, please raise your card. Councillor Nelson, Councillor Gare, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Whipper, Councillor McLaughlin. Those against? Councillors Turlin, Scandrett and Halstead. I declare the motion carried. We move on to page 32, planning proposal to rezone land in Yarra Road, Moss Vale.
Can we have an introduction, Mr Mayor?
Thank you, Ms Stannard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This matter, this planning proposal came to council last year and was recommended, or the resolution of council was that it be deferred until the local housing strategy was completed and adopted. That has now happened, and so we're bringing this report back to council with the recommendation that the land be reported for rezoning and for the minimum lot size, that it be integrated into the Chelsea Gardens Kumanji residential release area for any further development that includes potential subdivision as recommended in the local housing strategy. And the strategy also recommends or includes that the progression can't proceed until all of the services and infrastructure requirements have been met. So what we're doing is recommending support to include it in the Chelsea Gardens residential release area, but that it not proceed on its own, but proceed as part of that precinct, and that the DCP would be amended accordingly to reflect that.
Okay, thank you. Now, it's been around as Ms Stannard said, we've had a look at it, we've driven past it, we've inspected. So is there any questions to Ms Stannard?
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett?
Thank you. Could we just elaborate on how the adjoining blocks on Chelsea Kumanji are currently likely to come through the DA process? What size they're going to be?
Through you, Acting General Manager Susan Stannard.
I'm not familiar with the status of the DA process. I can say that the minimum lot sizes are that they are a minimum, and so if you have to wait till the DA stage for any confirmation of lot sizes and dwelling yield and so on.
Could I just fine tune that to say, does council have a view of tapering block sizes as you move towards differently zoned land? In other words, would we have larger blocks on the perimeter adjoining rural land?
Ms Stannard said it will come back to council at the DA stage.
I just asked if we had a view on it for those listening, Mr Mayor.
No, we don't have a view on it. We are looking at rezoning the land. Councillor Turlin and then Councillor Halstead.
The question I asked before in the briefing sessions is how are we going to deal with the sewer problems that we seem to have problems with the other site, with this new site? How do we deal with that?
Mr Pepping, could you answer that, please?
Through the mayor. So the first action is that a DA can't be approved on the site until satisfactory arrangements have been made, and part of those satisfactory arrangements will be for water and sewer supply. We're currently dealing with that aspect as part of the first stage of the Chelsea Gardens Kumanji site, and staff are working with the developers. The projection for the completion of the Moss Vale sewage treatment plant upgrade is anticipated around 2024, and it will more than adequately cover this additional number of allotments projected on this site as part of that upgrade. Given that this is a very early stage, so it's only the rezoning stage, and this will take a little while, and then the DA stage and whatever, it's unlikely that any blocks would be released on this part of the land until after 2024, and we would anticipate that there would be enough service at that time.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is that if the infrastructure's been put in by another developer, how do we connect the two sites together so one party's not paying for the infrastructure for a second party?
Well, that's a matter for them to work out between themselves. So with the with water and sewer charges, we do have a development servicing plan that levies every block for an amount for water and sewer supply. So those costs go towards any upgrades. The Chelsea Gardens Kumunji, as part of their initial site, and any trunk sewer mains that go to the sewage treatment plant will be installed by those developers. As to whether or not they work out some arrangement with these landowners and themselves, that's a matter for them to work out.
Okay.
So at this stage, well, Mr. Pepper, Councillor Halstead, I think you had a question.
I just want to say that it's totally appropriate, and in the circumstances, it's good that council's gone that way, because otherwise you've got an area of land here that quite properly should have been included in the zoning, but for obvious reasons it's been done separately. It's a good proposal, and the thing that I'm happy about is that the lot size is proposed effectively the same as Kumunji, etc. I was a bit worried there might have been some inconsistency there, but what I see at the moment is it's blatantly obvious this should happen, and I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Now we're sort of entering into debate, so is there you're in the, whoops, we've lost Councillor Scandrett.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My question to staff is, does this facilitate the roundabout being progressed on the corner of Yarra Road and Mount Broughton Road at an early part of the development process, please?
The answer is no, it has no bearing on that one little bit. We are looking at rezoning land. That is what the debate and the question is, and Councillor Halstead, I agree totally with what Councillor Halstead has just said. I think that it is just obvious that this is a way to make it a whole subdivision. Is there any other questions or comments? Then do we have have we got a mover? Moves Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Is there any further discussion? It's sort of been discussed with the questions. Okay, all in favour against the planning?
I think Councillor Nelson.
Did you want to
look, just quickly, Mr. Mayor, I support what Councillor Halstead said, and you endorsed it. It does make common sense that that land be included. For obvious reasons, you only have to look at page 34, 33 and 34 to see that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favour of the recommendation, it's a planning matter. Councillor Whipper is, okay, let's go. Who's in favour? Councillor Halstead, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Turlin, Councillor Andrews, Councillor McLaughlin. Can I see which way you're voting? Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Gare. Those against, Councillor Whipper. I declare the motion carried. We move on to page 12.4, planning proposal to rezone land Centennial Road Barrel from E3 to SP3 tourist. Oh, I moved one, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. To rezone 12.3, page 41, to rezone and amend the minimum lot size for land at 34 Sutter Road, Mossvale. Councillor, do we have a question or a mover, Councillor?
An introduction, Mr. Mayor.
Introduction, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This planning proposal has come in. The land is currently zoned R5, large lot residential. but as the report explains, it is surrounded by a number of varying land uses. And so one of the strategic assessments was of potential land use conflict. There is industrial land to the west and northwest. There is residential land to immediately adjoining, but adjoining that and beyond that to the east and north is open space forming part of the Burrardoo Landscape Conservation Area. The land also abuts the proposed Moss Vale bypass and thereby creates a boundary between the existing boundary of the Moss Vale Township and this particular land. So in terms of trying to integrate that into the existing Moss Vale Township, it's not a suitable location. And so for those reasons, and also I saw comment from our staff who are dealing with the bypass, and it was their firm belief that such a development proposal could jeopardise the success of the Moss Vale bypass. And so on that basis, the recommendation is that the planning proposal not be supported.
Okay, questions to the Stannard? Councillor Scanger.
Mr. Mayor, we were moving in April 2018 to acquire a piece of land in Sutter Road to facilitate the bypass, and it would be very relevant to this discussion to know whether that land has been acquired, because that bypass, which everyone wants, will impact upon residential amenity on this road. Could staff advise, has that land been acquired?
Mr. Paul.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer to Councillor Scanger's question is that those negotiations are on foot but not been completed.
So it would be inappropriate to make any comment. Any other question to this Stannard? Then we have a recommendation there.
Yes, I move it.
Move Councillor Nelson, second Councillor Andrews. Is there any debate? And I'll put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand. Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Halstead, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Whipper, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Turlin, Councillor Gare. So it's a unanimous decision. Carried. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. 4.4, page 50, planning proposal to rezone land at Centennial Road from E3 to SP3.
So moved, Mr.
Second.
Mayor.
They move Councillor Scandrett, seconded Councillor Whipper. Is there any questions for planning staff before it? Councillor Turl. Now, you've muted yourself, Councillor Turlin.
The first planning proposal we've dealt with tonight went through the housing strategy policy. These two have not been brought forward. So does this mean that anybody can do a planning proposal now that hasn't gone through the local housing strategy?
No. I'll ask Ms. Stannard to clarify.
The Sutter Road one, which we've just considered, that was a submission that was made prior to the housing strategy. So it's come back now that the housing strategy has been adopted. This relates to the rural tourism policy. So it came before council, and the recommendation was, and the resolution was that it be deferred or until the rural tourism policy was adopted, which has now occurred. And the planning proposal has been assessed in accordance with that policy. So taking into account the matters raised in the report. So going forward, any proponent who wished to seek rezoning for residential purposes would need to demonstrate compliance with the adopted housing strategy.
Okay, and answer the question. Councillor Halstead. He's right. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to Ms Stannard. With regard to this, is there any need to put an 88B or some other protection instrument on this so that it can't be subdivided and we end up with, multiple venues of such on this property? Is there any way to protect?
An application.
It's not a development application, Councillor McLaughlin. We are looking at a rezoning. So it's separate from putting a restriction or anything else on it.
Yeah, just through the mayor, the only time you would condition to put an 88B instrument is if there's a development application for a subdivision application and you would put restrictions there. You can't impose an 88B instrument when there is no proposal for subdivision or amendment to the title of the land.
So when would it be appropriate to do that in case this was further subdivided, when a subdivision comes in, is that correct?
When there is a request for a subdivision or a building entitlement
Or develop,
development application.
We would consider it at that time.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you.
We are basically just changing, if you correct me if I'm wrong, from an E3 zone to SB3 to allow what has basically been an illegal activity on an E3 zone up to date. Is that correct? Now it's SB3, it actually legalises everything that's been on the site?
Through the chair, so there are a number of, on the particular site, there are a number of activities, uses on the site that are lawful because they are approved under the old 1989 local environmental plan, including the cellar door, the vineyard, the restaurant, etc. What this does enable is for what we've classified as the temporary use of land, which is the concert development application, which has been approved on a temporary basis under the provisions of clause 2.8. Under a zoning of SP3, they would be able to then seek a permanent approval for that use.
Happy?
Well, we've actually given them a 5-year approval already, have we not?
Yes, temporary, yes.
All right, we have a recommendation. Move Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Halstead.
No, we've got.
No.
Councillor Whipper, oh, sorry, no, it was Councillor Scandrett and Councillor Whipper. It's a planning matter. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand card, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to 12.5, draft bonds policy, page 71. Do you want an introduction, Councillor?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Mr. Mooney?
Mr. Wilson will be on.
Mr. Wilton's downstairs. You there, Mr. Wilton?
Yes, got you here.
Yes.
The purpose of this report is to consider the final adoption of the draft bonds policy, which was considered by full council in October 2019. The draft policy seeks to provide an appropriate and an effective governance framework for the application and management of security bonds associated with incomplete works, and also the maintenance liability and also warranty periods associated with civil works projects. Council be aware that the matter went before full council on the 9th of October 2019, where it was resolved to place the draft bonds policy on exhibition for a period of 28 days and provide a report back to full council detailing submissions received during the exhibition period. The policy was placed on public exhibition between the 4th of February 2020 and also the 2nd of March 2020, and a total of 4 submissions were received during that period. Submissions detailed issues surrounding payment of interest on monies held, changes to references of the interim and final occupation certificates, concerns relating to the minimum bond amount payable, and also the requirement to obtain quotes and also quantity surveyors reports. Responses have been detailed appropriately on pages 72 to 75 of the report this evening. Minor amendments have been made to the wording of the draft policy following submissions being received, and council staff have recommended final adoption of the policy on this occasion.
Questions to Mr Wilton, councillor McLaughlin? And then
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Wilton, minimum bonds for small developers with regard to what is the minimum bond for people that are just doing, you know, a small, very small subdivision?
Through the chair, if you actually look at item number 3, it talks about damages bonds. The minimum amount is calculated at 10% of the value of the development work. So previously we used to, for damages bonds, used to have a minimum of $1,000. This, in certain circumstances, can actually be less than that $1,000, which works out to be 10% of the value of the work.
Thank you.
Okay, councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor. Mr Wilton, could you just comment on the justification for the 5% and sorry, for 10%, and give us a couple of examples as to where you got to 10% as opposed to 5%.
Mr Wilton.
Through the chair, we've basically used the 10% as a benchmark of value of actual capital investment value of works. Previously, where we have used 5% in these sort of scenarios, it hasn't been enough in order to appropriately provide council with a level of security. If that works wasn't maintained properly, or if there was a situation where the works actually failed, council was left exposed financially. There's been a number of situations in the Southern Highlands recently. There's a number of examples, which I won't actually name the actual developments, but there's been a number of examples where council has been left to actually fix certain civil works associated with those developments.
Yes, I didn't want you to name those, just to give us an idea of the failure issue. Was it, for example, damages to our infrastructure or what?
It was damages to council's infrastructure. There are other certain circumstances where the civil works have actually failed within the warranty period. Because council doesn't have a level of security over that works, obviously if the developer fails to perform that works to council standard, it becomes an issue where council has to step in and then actually undertake that work at its cost.
Yes, so sorry, the warranty period is how long?
The warranty period in this bonds policy is 24 months now.
Thank you.
All right, councillor Nelson, councillor Turland, and then councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, did we have any consideration for what similar sized councils are charging? Are we in the ballpark with similar sized councils?
Through the chair, yes, we have undertaken benchmarking in association with the development of the draft response policy.
Very good.
And yes, it seems to be consistent with those policies.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Turland, then councillor Halstead.
We know from stuff that has been undertaken on sewer mains that the council-owned work are not up to the scratch compared to the developers that have to put a bond in.
That's not a correct statement.
Councillor Turland, you can't say that.
He has.
Yeah,
It's true.
Yeah, no, please.
It's true.
That is not a public statement that you should be making and making a statement. You're stating a fact that it has every chance of being very inflammatory and very untrue.
I'll send you the photos of council's work on a private bond-paid $190,000 sewer system, and council connected to it, and the whole thing collapsed around the manhole. Mr. Paul has the photos.
I have no idea what councillor Turland's talking about.
Thank you. Can we stick to the questions, please?
You know exactly what I'm talking about, Mr. Paul.
No clue what you're talking about.
Old Barrel Road. You know the work is connected to it. It was below standard. It failed.
Councillor Turland.
Council didn't install it.
No, sir.
Yes, you did. You installed the main for the property across the road. Council staff did it.
Councillor Turland, if you raise that, will you ring Mr. Paul to discuss it? This is not...
I have, and given the plan, I'm saying there's two standards here.
I disagree.
We are debating whether there should be a bond system adopted by council. That is the debate. We are not getting on to workmanship for or against. Councillor Halstead.
Well, I think we should be looking at workmanship generally, but I'm not on for that reason. The project that's been referred to, my understanding is nearly all that was done by a contractor. Mr. Paul could probably verify that or otherwise. That has been an abysmal job, to be quite frank, from start to finish. But I don't want to talk about specific jobs. I just want to make sure that the bonding arrangements are, first of all, adequate and fair. It's been my experience over a long period of time, which none of you have experienced. That is that work within local government is 9 times out of 10 much better done by the in-house workforce. Now, I can't speak about here because I don't have any particular knowledge of it, but quite frank, at most times in my experience in certainly 29 years within local government, I had to watch the contractors like a hawk, particularly when it came to matters of major infrastructure. So I'm very interested in the one that Councillor Turlin spoke of, because I'm not sure any of it was done by the council. I might be wrong. There might have been a connection at one end of it, but I'll just leave my comments at that. I'm very concerned to see that we are covered, so that when work is done and it's not up to scratch, not up to standard, that we're covered to the point where we can recoup the cost involved.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. I assume you're moving the motion?
No, don't assume anything on this one. I'll just support it.
Okay. Then we have a recommendation. Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Andrews. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour, please raise your card. Okay, it's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Wilton. We now move on to 12.6, page 86, smoke-free outdoor area policy review. Councillor Whipper and then Councillor Scandrett. Questions, or are you moving it?
I'm just moving the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Moving it, seconded Councillor Scandrett. Is there any questions to the motion? There is nil. I put the recommendation. All in favour? Carried. Those against? Nil. So it was unanimous. 94. Compliance update notice and orders to be discussed in closed committee. Somebody moved that way. Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Nelson, that are going to closed. All in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. We move over to,
Which is, yeah, so 95.
yeah, 95.
Next page, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, so I've jammed in. Legal matters. Questions? Or somebody like to move it? Councillor Nelson's moving it, seconded by.
Is he moving we're going to close?
Yes.
Or
Are you moving we're going into close, Councillor Nelson? Yes. And who's seconding it going to close? Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Those against? Carried. 13.2, exclusion of questions from the business paper. Somebody moved that it be adopted, the note be noted. Moved Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor.
Question.
Whipper, and there is a question. Councillor Turlin.
It would seem that the first one that's been excluded, and I don't know which one, who it's on about, but it goes on to say that the general manager, it would be unlawful to include this item as it offends clause, the offence is of clause 3.15 of council code of meeting practice. And it goes on to say the council is not permitted to ask questions with a notice of 3.14 that comprises of a complaint against the general manager or staff member that implies of wrongdoing.
Yes.
Are these questions and notice of motions that have been removed, have they been forwarded to the OLG for comment?
I know the OLG has been consulted heavily on these notices of motion and questions with notice, but I'll ask Mr. Paul to make comment.
Mr Mayor, through you, at the end of the day, it is a decision for the General Manager. Now, the General Manager will take advice wherever she needs that advice to make that decision. My understanding is that she's done that and she's taken advice, and on that basis, this matter's been excluded.
Okay, so we have the motion as moved and seconded by councillors Whipper. I put it, all in favour, carried. We move to 13.2.
13.3.
Now, 13.3, exclusion of notice of motion for business paper the same way. Move councillor Nelson and seconded councillor McLaughlin. Put it, all in favour, against, carried. We move to petition Redford Park, that the petition be received and noted. Move councillor Whipper, second councillor McLaughlin. Is there any discussion on it?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Question in relation to the petition, councillor Scanlon.
Yes, Mr Mayor, could staff tell me, is this the second or third petition from residents in that estate that we've received against that subdivision?
Mr Mayor, councillor Scanlon, we'll have to take that on notice because we don't have the answer to that question.
Thank you, Mr Paul. I'm inclined to think it's the third. Thank you very much.
The answer to that question, we'd have to check.
Anyway, it is there to be noted as moved by councillor Whipper and McLaughlin.
Can we speak to it, Mr Mayor?
Oh, yes, you may speak to it. It's really can't be spoken to much because it's a petition.
Oh, yes, but I can
Well,
certainly.
don't let him
say that-
speak then.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Halford. I'll speak then. With regard to the 100-odd people that signed this, and some of those people had dual occupancies, as we've noted, they will be watching very closely, I think, at the next election for people that didn't support the community in this regard. And my information is that this matter is not resolved or over, because I believe the estate of the late James Fairfax are seeking legal action to take this forward. So I think those 100-odd people that signed this can be assured that the estate will be standing up for what that they have signed, they've all signed for, and they're going to be standing up for the encumbrances that they put on the title for people to sign. So all those people that have got land there have signed up to abide by certain covenants. Now, these covenants, if they're broken, can then be taken to another place. And my understanding is that that will proceed.
Okay, thank you, councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you.
Put the recommendation as moved by councillors Whipper and seconded by councillor McLaughlin. Everybody in favour is. So we now move on to page 104.
Happy to move that way, Mr Mayor.
Okay, it's in relation to Management and Advisory Committee report. Move councillors Nelson and Halstead. Is there any discussion on them?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just quickly say that I've read through the committee minutes. I have an interest in those 355 committees that met on those occasions. I note that they're not meeting at the moment because of COVID-19, but it's good to see the minutes and see how well they're doing and the funds that they raise that and then put back into their respective committee halls. So thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Nelson. As moved by councillor Nelson and Halstead, all in favour, please say aye or raise your card. Carried. We move on to 17.1, page 105. questions with notice, Barrel Uniting Church charity. The question has been put and the recommendation has been noted. Can't move the questions, or are you moving it, councillor?
I'm going to ask some questions and I'll be moving it, of course.
Okay, so moved, councillor Scandrett, seconded.
Second.
Whipper. Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, in relation to this, what is the exact problem with getting a determination from staff as to whether a heritage report is needed? And the cost of that could be as high as $15,000, $20,000.
Ask the question. Can we get that question answered?
You're driving over the top of me, Mr. Mayor. Could I finish my question? Right? In $15,000 or $20,000, could the staff advise why we can't just pop out and have a look at that to establish what is the necessity for such a request upon the applicant?
Mr. Pepping,
Is that something you're happy to answer? or
Yeah,
will
well,
I take on that?
the response is there. It doesn't qualify. A development application is required because it is a heritage property. As a result of that, under the Part 5 of the Winter Carriby LEP, 5.10, a development application is required to be supported by a heritage statement. Now, it is up to the applicant to determine, based on the works that they're going to do, what level of detail that needs to be put in. And they can discuss with the staff if it's satisfactory or whatever, but you can't deny the fact that a development application is required. Depending on the extent of the work, will determine the extent of that heritage reporting.
Well, I regret to say, Mr. Pepping, that I've gone and had a look, and I don't believe in my own mind that requires a DA, a heritage report. It's simply a removal of it and replacement of the kitchen. But I will say this is a charity kitchen feeding.
Okay, no, you're not going to say anything. We're on questions. Councillor McLaughlin, then Councillor Halstead, then Councillor Turley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's not really a question, but I think I can let Councillor Scandrett know that it's not going to be anywhere near $15,000. There is someone on my Heritage Committee that has volunteered to do the requirements because they've been in touch with a gentleman associated with the church who contacted me, and I think we'll be able to move this forward quite quickly. It's not going to cost anywhere near that. Someone's volunteered to do it, for free. And I think that will cover what is required because there's no external construction. There's nothing really, as Councillor Scandrett alluded to with regard to, but it's, as council staff know, because it's a heritage item, that needs to happen. So it's going to happen, but it's going to happen with with the support of someone from the Heritage Committee. I don't need to mention that, but because there's no external
I'm glad I had
work to the there's no external work to the building. I think you'll find it's going to be a good result.
I'm going to pull you up there. We are getting in debate, and rather than I thought you were just going to answer the question that Councillor Scandrett asked. Councillor Halstead, then Councillor Turley.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that this is dealt with in an appropriate manner and that due process is followed. It seems to me, I don't know anything about the details of it other than minimal. And I think Mr. Pepping's on the money, but what we don't want is people being pushed into or coerced to undertake heritage studies or any other study for that matter, which is totally unnecessary or, you know, at a level which is not required. So I'm just leaving my comments at that.
You, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Turley. You've muted yourself, Councillor Turley. Councillor Turley, you've muted yourself.
Page 25, page 105, where it says 20 subdivisions 26 of minor building alterations. Those items in that list from A to G are if it's considered that's all the work that needs to be done, does that mean it doesn't need a DA?
No, if you read what it says, so minor building alterations for the replacement of whatever. I've highlighted kitchen because that's what it's talking about. But if you look on the next page, is development specified for this code if it is not constructed or installed on or in a heritage item. So it's not exempt development because the building that it's proposed to be included in is a heritage item. So
But the question is, the kitchen's been there for probably 30 years.
Does not matter, does not matter. If it's building alterations to a bathroom or a kitchen, it is not exempt development. You needed to lodge a DA.
Them's the rules. Okay, so the recommendation is there as moved by, putting him back up again, as moved by councillor Scandrett and seconded.
Can I put an amendment in, please?
Yes, you can, what's your amendment, councillor?
The amendment is that council staff undertake a site visit with the management of the Bowral United Church to determine works required.
It doesn't.
I'll ask Mr. Pepping to comment on that.
I won't comment on it, Mr. Mayor, because that was the nature of the question and I gave the response.
Look, this is to take the heat out of it and to get some clear direction to the church. That's the most important thing here.
All that. Councillor McLaughlin.
Look, Mr. Mayor, look, it's going to cost them a couple of $100. It's not going to hold it up. They do need, because it's a heritage item, it's stated, as Mr. Pepping has said, it needs it. Now it's going to be, I've contacted and talked to Ken Adams about this. He is very happy with the solution we've come up with. We don't need to move anything further. Just note it, it's going to be dealt with because there's someone that's going to do the report.
Mr. McLaughlin, I thought you were seconding the motion. You put your hand up, but you're not seconding the motion.
No, I'm not seconding the motion. I'm saying, let's just...
The amendment doesn't have a seconder, sorry.
Oh, I'm not amending, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, do we have an amendment to, a seconder for councillor Turlin's amendment? Councillor Scandrett?
Mute.
You have muted yourself. Are you seconding it, councillor Scandrett?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm withdrawing my motion, which was the recommendation.
Well,
okay.
Because
I'll move the recommendation.
it is a charity feeding the homeless.
Right,
And I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion has been moved by councillor Turlin and seconded by councillor Scandrett. The amendment. The amendment now becomes the motion.
Correct.
Now the amendment will be the motion as moved by councillor McLaughlin and seconded by councillor Nelson. Right, we all clear on it? Councillor, any councillor wish to speak?
May I add to the motion that I put forward, the amendment, which becomes the motion now? The council staff undertake a site visit with the management of the Bowral United Church.
Will now be the amendment, and Gary's original amendment now is the motion.
So can we word it as part of the question on page 105? Could councillors inspect or that staff inspect? That staff inspect
with the church.
with the management of the church barrel. Yep.
That's it. Yeah, take the heat out of it. Yeah. Because then I'll debate it if I may.
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay. Look, the simple thing here is we need to take the heat out of this. This is obviously the church doing the right thing. They could have actually done the work and nobody would have been the wiser without getting into a controversy. I see here already on page 106, statement by staff, that it would be inappropriate for a council to meet with the staff or such matter in a breach of the code of conduct may occur. Well, This is exactly what councillors are here to do, is to try and bring things from the public into the council arena to try and get some sense out of it, because it's a minefield for the general public to understand how the system works. It's exactly what a council is here to do, is to try and bring things that they've got problems with, to try and have them resolved emotionally, physically, and financially as easy as possible. There's been no wrongdoing here. This has just been an effort to bring something forward from a group in the general public. Now, it might be they can do it in stages and they might not need a DA in the sense of just replacing what's already been there. Now, I know what Mr. Pepping's saying, they'll need a DA, but it's been there for a long, long time to date. It's a non-for-profit. So you can just imagine lodging a DA with the work required, and then council is going to have to vote to give their DA fees back because they're non-for-profit. Let's take the heat out of it. Let's see if we can come to an agreement between the parties, the council staff and the church to resolve a simple way to bring this forward. It is that simple. It shouldn't have got into being a heated discussion. Let's get the parties together to resolve the issue as quick and as easy as possible, or we will be paying for the DA fees back as a non-for-profit.
Yeah, well, I think the legality of what you are requesting cannot be done legally. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Mayor. Look, I agree with that. We can't make exceptions. Look, I heartily, what Councillor Turlin is saying is absolutely correct, and it's unfortunate, but we can't just change the rules to suit, and just say, oh, look, they're doing, it's charitable work. It's set there for a reason. We're going to minimise the cost. All the parties involved in this are quite happy with the way we're going forward with it. I know it's unfortunate they're going to have to pay a DA fee, but they've done the right thing. They've put their hand up. It is a heritage item, and we can't just pick and choose. If it's a rule for all heritage items, then it's got to be adhered to. We can't take exceptions. But as I've explained earlier, this is going to be quickly dealt with by someone on the Heritage Committee who is happy to write a report. It won't be very costly. I don't know what the DA fees would be, but I'm sure Mr. Pepe can tell us that they can be refunded. So therefore, I think we just move on and note this. Thank you.
You, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, there's been 9,000 kilos of perishable food distributed from this kitchen, 16,000 non-perishable items received, 600 volunteer hours served, 14,800 non-perishable items distributed, plus the perishable food, and 1,895 walk-ins just this year seeking assistance. It's adjacent to the men's shed, and the church is currently building a toilet and shower facility for people who are homeless in the rear of the church. This is a most compelling reason for us to help with this, not to break rules, but all we're talking about, and I've engaged you on discussion on this, Mr. Mayor, and you haven't responded other than to say you'll refer it to staff. It is a remove and replace of an existing kitchen. There is no affectation to the heritage item. It has aluminium windows. There's a couple of skylights that are going to be removed and the roof restored from the 1980s rebuild. There is no change to the building fabric. It is simply a whole lot of modern new equipment coming in so they can deal with an increasing problem, which I sadly think is going to explode later this year. So why are we not just simply getting in the car and popping out there to confirm their own assessment? Councillor McLaughlin, Reverend Adams has self-assessed this using heritage guidelines. It is not requiring a heritage study. And look, I probably agree with Councillor Turlin on this. It's just a remove and replace. It hardly requires a DA because nothing's changing. There's an existing opening behind a cupboard that they're going to uncover by demolishing the cupboard, but the opening is already there. So this is a very good way for council to support this by simply getting in the car and staff popping out. I originally offered to go out with staff. that was frowned upon. But having said that, councillors often go and visit sites with staff to get a dimension on it from staff without referring to council. I'm very sad that I had to refer this up to council. It's filling up the agenda, but my goodness sakes, talk about running around the mulberry bush. This should have been dealt with at the time by staff just popping out and saying, yes, we see the point. It is existing, remove and replace. So councillors, please support what is in front of you from Councillor Turl and myself so we can get moving on this.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead.
You look, pretty simply, most of what Councillor Scandrett said then was unnecessary in my view. What Councillor Turl has moved is to go and have a look. He's not suggesting any changes to the system. He obviously wants to talk or have the staff talk to the management. They'll lead them through the processes, and then the appropriate due process will follow, which will be a DA and, a report on the heritage side of it, which obviously Councillor McLaughlin has volunteered free of cost. And that's the process. So to me, there's nothing untoward about the what is now the motion moved by Councillor Turl, and it's totally appropriate in the process of trying to solve a problem initially.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to support the now amendment because of the regulations. And I hear and no, not one council would not have sympathy for the church in what they're doing. Everybody, and I would be very disappointed if any councillor didn't support the work of the community and the community volunteers. But there is a code, and Mr. Pepping would not be requesting a DA for the sake of requesting a DA. It is a requirement as legislated and in the building code that we are obligated to follow. It's not about not supporting or popping out there and seeing if it needs to be done or not. Staff you can put in as part of the amendment that staff meet on site with the volunteers or the church to discuss the.
Happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. Put it in.
All right, then point 2 would be the council staff meet with the
council staff have been discussing with the church when they initially put the proposal.
Then we would do it again.
Exactly.
We do it again. The council staff meet with the applicants or the proposed applicants in relation to their development.
It's the motion and the amendment, just put them together.
Well, we are saying they still need a DA.
Well, no one's saying they don't, Mr. Mayor. No one's saying in anything that's been said there that they don't need that, because they do. And what Barry's just suggested, well, with due respect, what Barry's just suggested is right.
I disagree with the fact that there has been in the debate that we do not charge them. That's basically what this is about, as far as I can see. Anyway, if the mover is going to accept that in the amendment, then let's just do it.
I think it was about a heritage report, Mr. Mayor. That's what was the requirement. It came through that it was going to be $15,000 for a heritage report. That's where this came from. And that is not the case at all.
There is, if you're going to include that, there is the amendment and there is the motion. I will put the amendment first. Councillor Turley, you are muted.
Reply. I have a right of reply.
You do?
Thank you. Council obviously have had a DCU with the staff from the church already today, it would seem, from what we just heard. All I'm asking is for the parties to go on site to do the same thing, not in an office in Moss Vale, on site. You're dealing with a bunch of people that don't desperately understand the whole development process. And at the stage of when the heritage study was reported to happen, it was probably, they probably got a quote for 15 grand or 10 grand, I don't know. And that's all very well. At the time, that's all they knew, and they can't afford that. All I'm just trying to say is, instead of having a development control unit meeting in Moss Vale, a site meeting, you go to the site and have a meeting with them and you lead them through the process. I'm not asking for anything that that normal person would not have to do as a DA. But all you're doing is helping the people through the process, the churchgoers, through the process of what they need to do on site. They don't understand that. They've been working in this kitchen for 30 years, it would seem. And so all we're trying to do is get the parties together to take the heat out of it. And Councillor McLaughlin, if that's the case, a cheap, maybe inadequate and hopefully not, heritage study will be done. That'll be great. But at the moment, all they're trying to do is save the money so they can put it back to the people in the Shire. Let's just get them together, not arms apart, not in Moss Vale, on site, and help them through the process. I can't see where the issue is here. It's just the staff working with the church to come up with the best result. That's all it is. And it might be just as simple. If it's replacing a stove for another stove, he might not need to do it. If the issue about pulling the cupboard wall out is going to be an issue about heritage, leave the damn thing there. If the skylights are going to be a problem because they shouldn't have been there, but they've been in there for 20 years, leave them there. Don't touch them. It is that simple. I don't understand where the heat is. And they will be probably applying for their DA fees back for a non-for-profit. And, you know, chances are council has actually paid some money through the council's grant system to put stuff in that church over the last 30 years anyway. The community grant system. We've probably funded some of it already ourselves. Just take the heat out of it. Go to the site, not to Moss Vale. Talk to them on site. It's that simple. You shouldn't be making an argument about it. And it's not breaking the rules. Many times people have asked for some support in some form to try and understand the process with council staff. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the community assistance scheme does not allow for fixtures in private ownership. Okay, so we have the motion and then we have the amendment. So I put all in favour of the motion, please raise the amendment. Please raise your hand or put up your card.
Sorry, are we doing the amendment, Mr. Mayor?
We are voting all in favour of the amendment as moved by councillors McLaughlin and Nelson. Please raise your card. Councillors McLaughlin, Whipper, Andrews, Nelson and Gare. All of those in favour of the motion.
No.
Against the amendment, sorry, against the amendment. Councillors Halstead, Turland and that's it. I declare the motion, the amendment carried. The amendment now becomes a motion. All in favour of the motion, please raise your card. Okay, carried unanimously. 18.1, notice of motion, playhouse renovation. Councillor Turland gave his intention to move the following motion.
Mayor, I've got a bit of additional information.
Now, before this is discussed, I will ask Mr. Paul to make a comment.
Mr. Mayor, not a comment, just some additional information that councillors need to be aware of. As of yesterday, a letter of offer was issued to a local builder who's been procured to strip the inside of the Mittagong Playhouse, that includes removing the ceiling, etc., and to engage an engineer to do further assessment of the structure and to bring back to council staff options in terms of how we can move forward to repair or replace whatever it is we need to replace in that building. So at this point in time, we are moving on this project, and I will say to you, it is a local builder, just for council's information. So from that point of view, we are trying to keep this project moving. Once we have that work is done and that engineering advice is provided to council staff, we'll come back to council with options as to how we move forward.
Right, so things are progressing and it was always the intent. Councillor McLaughlin, question.
Yes, question. I was wondering, that's good to hear, but I was wondering why it's taken so long to get someone to pull the ceiling down. Did we have to wait for quotes, or are we doing it cost hourly rate, or what's the situation?
Hang on now, before it's answered, I don't have anything to debate or to ask questions on. So unless there is a variation of that motion or it's withdrawn, I can't.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be moving an amendment.
Well, at this stage, you're moving a motion because Councillor Turlin has not got a seconder for his motion.
Oh, well.
Well, I was moving an amendment for have an information session, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Councillor Scandred has seconded Councillor Turlin's motion. You are moving an amendment that we...
Well, I think it might be a foreshadowed motion because I've given the information to the secretary that a briefing session be held with councillors in relation to the proposed playhouse renovations.
Well, it might be a bit too early to do even that.
Again, Mr. Mayor, if I'm able to comment.
I'll ask Mr. Paul to comment. We're not in debate, so Mr. Paul can comment.
Look, just some feedback to you, Councillor Nelson. Quite happy to do that, but to be blunt, it would be superfluous at this point in time until such time as that builder has got on site and stripped the interior of that building and then got an engineer there to undertake further detailed assessment and to come back and provide us with recommendations on alternatives to, as I said, repair and or refurbish that building. We're really not in a position to have much of an information session. So it was my intention anyway, once we have that information, to come back to council with options as to how we move forward and what potentially the cost of that might be, so that council can give clear direction and then we'll get on with it.
Could I ask a question then, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm looking for... Well, we have a motion on the book. So a question, Councillor Nelson.
Well, Mr. Paul, how can you undertake where it says here? No, the go to the motion. How can you then go ahead and prepare, design, and construct tender documents when we haven't even moved that far?
Well, look, Councillor, in answer to your question, that is an option where, quite frankly, you go to the marketplace and you ask somebody to come and do a detailed investigation, do a design, and come back to you with a proposal. There is a lot of risk in that. It's one alternative. In effect, we are doing that, but we are doing that in a staged way. I've said we have engaged a local builder, a known local builder, who's been engaged to strip the interior of that building, including the seating, the ceiling, the PA system, the lights and everything else, get that out of that building, and then engage a suitably qualified civil engineer or an engineer qualified to give advice in regard to the structural issues in that building, and then come back to us with recommendations on what options there are to make good on that building. Now, once we've got that information back, we could then, once council's made a decision on how to proceed, put a specification together and go out to tender to have those works completed.
Well, you're saying to me that you've got the matter in hand.
That's it.
So, I believe so.
I would be suggesting strongly that the motion be withdrawn and another motion be put up.
Can I just...
Councillor Turlin, question.
If you look at what item 1 is in my motion, the council staff prepare to design and construct tender. We are already, from what we're told today, going down that path. The ceiling's been pulled out. The design by the builder with the engineer is pulling together what work needs to be done and putting a budget on it. We are already doing what my motion is getting somebody to get in and actually look at the work now.
Hear,
Not
hear.
waiting, now. It's already happening. Now, you've only just told us that now. Why wasn't that in this statement here in front of us tonight? Admittedly, it's 2 weeks old, but what I'm saying is what you're doing is what I'm requesting, which is great. Fantastic.
Councillor Tillman, I agree to a point. What we won't get is a detailed design and specifications. What we will get is an engineering assessment that provides us with, in broad terms, options as to how we should proceed. We would then need to take the next step and get a detailed design and then put it out to tender.
I think you just wait until what Mr. Paul has just suggested occur, and you can put that into motion. Once the civil engineer and whatever has.
Okay, we'll have a briefing session, remove the first 2 items and just put a briefing session. I'm happy with that because we've stimulated the council to actually get somebody to do the work so we can actually see what needs to be done.
Well, again,
That's all I was asking for from up front, is to move it forward.
We are, in some respects, furiously in agreement, but I will say to you that as part of the draft 2020-21 budget operational plan, which has now been adopted by council, there was funds provided in that budget, and it was listed in the operational plan, that this was the action we were going to take. And that's what we've done.
And those who voted for the budget and supported it.
That's
So, look, I'm looking for somebody to move an amendment or something that will reflect what Mr. Paul has said, or I will move something as a suggestion.
Question.
Mr. Councillor Scan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could someone advise why we are looking for a new engineer when the previous engineer, Mr. Agus, had been looking at this since a year before we closed it? And also, what is the current commencement date for the Barrel Memorial Hall?
Well, that's got nothing to do with it. But anyway, I'll answer the first question. Councillor, we got advice, as you're well aware, when we first became aware of the structural issues with this building, from a qualified engineer, structural engineer, to give us some sense of what was going on there. Now, that advice, from my memory, that was provided to council in November last year and to council staff, indicated that there was further investigation required, and that would require the building to have the ceiling removed, to get in there and have a real good look at what's going on and to come up with options. That's what we're about to do.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. That didn't answer my question, which was, why are we using another engineer?
Councillor Scandrett, I didn't say
Using another engineer, Scandrett.
What I said to you was that we went out and we engaged the builder. It will be up to the builder to engage their own engineer, because they have to do a very detailed assessment now.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. That has answered the question. And my reference to Barrel Memorial Hall was simply that these are our 2 performance halls in the Shire, and both are out of action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Halstead. You've muted yourself.
Look, if you look at the red on the page, clearly this was deferred from two previous meetings because they never got to any conclusion. But so, in light of that, what Gary's got written here was quite relevant when he said it, and the design and construct tender was quite appropriate. Obviously, now there's been some move internally, and presumably Barry Paul is well aware of that, to go down the line of certainly getting more inspections done and undertaking some work. So it seems to me the work that's being undertaken or proposed to be undertaken at the moment is not being done in accordance with the tender. So it must be some quote. I don't know, but we need to get this clarified because I don't want to be part of breaking the law.
I need to respond to that. We haven't broken the law. It was through a competitive process. We went out for a formal request for quotation. The sort of money that we're talking about for this investigation and this work that's going to be done is well below the tender threshold. We have complied with our procurement procedures and the local government.
Councillors, Councillor Nelson, can I ask somebody to move a recommendation that the matter, once the Mittagong Playhouse has been inspected and a full engineering report can be brought to council, then council holds an information session.
Here, here.
I mean,
Mr.
that's-
Mayor, I actually have that in the motion number 1, that council holds a briefing session with councillors in the matter of urgency will only be after you get the work back from the builder who's pulling the ceiling down, looking at the engineering, coming back with a proposal. It is already there. The second part of my motion, if you read it, the 22nd of July is way out of question. It will have to be something like now by the 26th of August. That's a month from to date pretty well. So really, you already have that in place from the number 1 as per the motion. Number 2 of the motion, change it to August. And then we've got something that's actually coming together and we'll know what's going on. It's only been the last 10 minutes that somebody's told us from council that they're getting the ceiling down. This is 8 months after we knew the problem. 8 months ago, we knew there was a problem and the ceiling is just coming down to get the engineering resolved in the trust.
The budget was only passed 2 weeks ago.
I get the budget, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, I am going to disallow this question, this motion in a minute, unless there is something which is tangible and can be done. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'm not sure whether it should be foreshadowed or an amendment. I'm not sure, but I'll propose that to simplify this and let's get on with it, that council engage, I'll use a local builder to take or to do what works are necessary to open ceilings, etc., on the internal of the building of the Mittagong Playhouse, to allow an engineer, I won't say where the engineer comes from, but an engineer to do, then to take, to produce, or you might think of a better word, produce a report, and someone can change this if you wish, a report on the works required going forward. And then you can add, if you like, after that for Councillor Nelson, that once this report becomes available, the council, that it's brought to the attention of councillors via a briefing session.
Yeah, that's a good way forward, because we don't know what's required, we don't know how long. To try and put a time frame on it, it's going to be up to the builder himself. We can say it is urgent, but there are a lot of things happening in the community at the moment, which we seem to be forgetting with the trivial stuff we are debating. Let's just let the engineer and the builder get on with it and come back, as Councillor Andrews has said, with a report to council, and then we discuss it.
Can I suggest that you take the 26th of August out of my motion? The words are the same as Councillor Andrews, is number 1 is the same. And just you've actually just informed us half an hour ago that you're undertaking this particular work now with a builder. So this has stimulated the issue to bring it forward. So it's great. Have the briefing session, have the engineering have a look, and then we'll know what's happening. And if you're worried about the date, take the date out of it. It's fine.
Take out the bit about Franklin Street as well. We don't need that in there.
Well, source of funding. Take Franklin Street out.
Yep. Already committed that funding.
Yeah, that funding has been committed in the budget, 5.2 million to the animal shelter.
Of which we haven't got a report yet either.
Look, the budget has been adopted. That has been adopted. That's the funding that you have to work on. And the amount of monies that have been attributed to the Playhouse are being now utilised to be able to begin some scoping work on it. Councillor Andrews' motion is the obvious way to go.
Well, you've got.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
You've got the same motion, and you've got a foreshadow, an amendment, and a motion. Which one are we working on, Mr. Mayor?
We
We
are
have three
working,
things in front of us. Which one's right?
we are working on the motion and councillor Andrews has moved an amendment.
And I'll second that amendment and withdraw my foreshadowed motion, Mr Mayor.
So can we now, just to clear this up to get through the rest of the business paper,
My God.
Mr Mayor, the risk of raising, you're right. Can I just make one tiny suggestion to the amendment, please, so that it is probably better reflects the situation? My suggestion would be that the amendment reads that it be noted that council staff have engaged a local builder to carry out this.
Yes.
Because that's already happened.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yep.
all
Yep.
right. So I will put the amendment as moved by councillor Andrews and seconded by councillor Nelson. All in favour of the amendment, please.
Well,
hold
wait a
your-
minute. We haven't debated anything yet. We've just had questions and arguments between the parties.
Well,
Oh, gee Williams, do we need to?
Well, you're chairing the meeting. You've had a foreshadowed motion, an amendment and a motion all back to front. And here we are, we haven't even got to the debate stage.
Sorry, councillor Turlin.
Yeah, well, after one would think a lot of experience, one would know what's going on.
I
The
do
issue
know-
is, if you look at the draft budget that we just
Councillor
approved,
Turlin,
if you look at the draft budget that we approved,
you, councillor Turlin, are treading on very thin ice.
You're out of order.
If you.
I am.
Yes, you are,
You
councillor
tell me,
Turlin.
where am I out of order?
The way you're carrying on and making innuendos.
Well, I'm not the one that didn't have foreshadowed amendments and motions all back to front.
Now, everybody is being muted. And this will happen if this tirade continues against the chair. So when you've all taken a deep breath, then I'll unmute.
And Mr Mayor, we didn't hear what you said because you were muted.
Right? You will be unmuted in 20 seconds. So you can all just reflect on how you're going to handle yourselves for the next part of the meeting, because I'm over it. All right, unmute. Okay, we're back, and councillor Andrews, question, comment.
Not a question. Can I just speak briefly on my amendment? Is that appropriate at this time?
Councillor Turlin has the right to address his motion,
Okay.
and you have the right then to address the amendment.
Okay. The council staff's report here says there's $70 million to be spent, and that's correct. But when you look at the draft budget and the budget that we've approved, in 1920 we had $2,235,000 in building. In 2021, $7,117,000. That was the draft budget. So the $70 million, if you look at the mathematics, most of that is work on roads and bridges and other external works. The building works is minor compared to the $70 million. So the issue is here to use the statement in the staff's comments that we had $70 million worth of work. We have such a minor on building works, physical construction on our building works. That is the difference.
Okay, thank you.
I haven't finished yet. You were shaking your head, so I was wondering if you were going to say something.
I don't have to say anything.
No, you don't have to say. That's right. So what you've got is 8 months later, after our briefing sessions, when this particular property became a problem, not much has happened. We built a wall that'll hold up the wall of China for $100,000. It could have been done with hired material to do the same thing. And here we are now, 8 months later, we're now trying to get to a point, and I thank you, Mr. Paul, for moving forward with getting a builder involved, pulling the ceiling down, which we knew in November the 6th last year in our briefing session that it had to come down. But it's taken 8 months to get the ceiling down. Here we are, we get it down, we have an engineer look at it, which is what you're engineering with the builder to do, and we get a solution solved. It's not unsurmountable, it's so easy, it's just ridiculous that we're dragging this on forever. But you can't use the excuse of $70 million worth of work in front of us that we can't get this project fast-tracked and on its way. It is crazy. This is a project that should be fixed. It doesn't even need a DA. It's council-owned property. We're renewing what's there. It is simple. And what we've done is made it an ugly situation with the way that this whole meeting's been performed in relation to this project. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, and you do need a DA. Councillor Andrews. You've muted yourself, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this building is very important to me. Also, Councillor Turlin, as he makes very clear, and I appreciate his emotional response to try and get this project moving. My amendment is just a simple way to go forward, well, I suspect almost immediately. We'll call it stage 1, stage 2 and 3 and 4, and whatever comes after can't even be discussed until we get through this initial stage of investigation. It just simplifies this whole argument. We've been going on for debate, if you like, for 20 odd minutes now. All we need to do is to allow this to happen, the builder to get in, engage an engineer, come back to council. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was in February we allocated a budget of some hundreds of thousands of dollars for interim works, which were to remove the ceiling and so on. And now it's nearly August.
That's not correct.
That's not correct, Councillor.
When was it, Mr. Paul?
The 7th of July when you adopted your budget.
Oh, okay, but I think we allocated an initial amount of money for getting the support beams up, the props and all of that. When was that?
Councillor, we allocated money in the December review to make the building secure.
Yes, which my recollection is that was to also expedite the removal of the ceiling so we can investigate structural issues. I'm debating, thank you. Anyway,
you asked me a question, I've answered it.
Okay.
My point is, in debate, is that we must get on with this as a matter of urgency. The theatrical groups and music groups across the Shire, as well as smaller organisations that utilise that hall, and of course Barrel Memorial Hall, which is also dark. I just shake my head at that one. It should be underway. It was meant to be underway 2 years ago. But anyway, we need to get on with this as a matter of urgency. So I will continue to support Councillor Turlin's motion here, or that we get this reported back to council as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Then I will put the amendment as moved by Councillor Andrews. Would all in favour please raise their card? Councillors Nelson, Andrews, Gare and McLaughlin. Any other, are those against? Councillor Whipper, Scandrett, Halstead and Turlin. I will use the casting vote to vote for the amendment. The amendment now comes the motion. All in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillors, we might nearly get a unanimous, not quite. Councillor Turlin and Scandrett are against. Everybody else is in favour. We move on to 18.2, notice of motion, Shire Bike Strategy.
Simple. Put the motion. We've had the discussion. Put the motion.
No, debate.
Well, if you want to debate it, you can.
There you go.
I'll move an amendment, thanks.
I have a move and a second.
Who has a seconder? Who is seconding councillor Turlin's motion? Councillor Scandrett? Councillor Nelson, are you moving an amendment?
Yes, move the amendment number 2, Mr Mayor.
Do you have a seconder?
It's number 2.
Councillor Whipper. That we meet with the proponent initially. So it's moved councillor Nelson, seconded councillor Whipper, that we meet with the briefing session with the proponent.
Can I add something to this?
If you're adding to the motion or the amendment,
Just to the motion, if councillor Turlin will allow it.
What is it?
Oh, basically that this be a look at the whole strategy. I mean, if we're just going to look at just one little part of it, well, I think we should be looking at the whole bike strategy across the Shire. Let's have an information session on the whole lot, not just this particular one. Let's have a look.
Mr.
Yep.
Councillor McLaughlin, we actually have a strategy in place. It's been put in place. It's already in place.
You're correct. Can that be addressed at the same time?
Well, we already have a strategy. This is just adding to the strategy.
I think that's what Councillor McLaughlin's saying, is that it be assessed in conjunction with the existing strategy.
Okay, fine. Add that in. It's fine. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
okay. Councillor Turlin, do you wish to speak to it?
No, it's a bit old and tooth now. I mean, we had a briefing session a couple of weeks ago from one proposal. So let's just get them in and let's see what we can do with it.
Okay, councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, in recent times, we've had a huge influx from the Sydney market. There's 5 million people up there coming down here, exploring our region because they can't travel anywhere else. We've been particularly favoured. And one of those things I've noticed is the amount of cyclists on the roads, families on Bong Bong, all over the Shire. And so when Councillor Turlin put this originally up, I thought, great, this is a really good idea to expand this, look at this initiative coming from the community to widen our horizons. And that's why I think Councillor McLaughlin's addition to that is particularly relevant, because we've got to now stand back and say, hang on, if we're going to be maybe the premier destination in terms of distance from Sydney for family cyclists and also for commuters, the original strategy we have talks about cycling between the towns as a form of transport. Well, these things are very relevant and the world is changing. So this is great. Let's get on with this. Let's show that we're in charge of recreation in our area. And of course, it fits very, very strongly in with some of our climate type aspects in terms of being a sustainable activity. A lot of people are going to be needing to get off the couch, and I think we're going to see that. I haven't asked Steve Rosa lately how the bike hire is going, but a while back it was flat out, the e-bikes out of the Welcome Centre. So I support this motion by Councillor Turlin.
Thank you, councillor McLaughlin.
Look, councillor Turlin's correct. I think where we can get bike tracks off our roads and we can initiate that, I'm all for it. Look, under COVID-19, we've seen a massive rise in people riding push bikes, either to get to school or not use public transport. E-bikes, the whole bit. And I think we know across all the LGAs, massive bike tracks have been put in. I was at a pump track on the weekend. I've made a submission, a councillor request going forward that this council look at implementing a pump track. It is a destination bike track that people go to from all ages. I've got a 2-year-old grandson that rides it, and plus teenagers. Everyone can use these facilities, and I've sent it in, and I think other councils are doing it. Kiama Council at the moment are going forward. They're getting grants from the state government. We're seeing this movement right across the place, and we have got a plan in place that's supposed to connect all the villages and towns with bike tracks. And I asked the question, Mr. Mayor, with regard to what's happening on Kirkham Road and with those extensions that we're doing, are we considering bike tracks? Are we considering people that want to commute by bike? I think it's important that we have a look at this and do it now. So bring forward this. I'm happy to support it because I think it needs to be addressed now. And what a great thing it would be if we are the destination. I see bikes turning off the freeway to go to Welby to use the mountain bike track. It is so well used in this community. So, you know, apart from what happens at Bundanoon, there are so many cyclists in the Shire, but not just the cyclists, the kids riding to school, the mums and dads that want to be able to ride safely and not on roads. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I've unmuted. Look, the applicant rang me seeking support for this. Unfortunately, his land was being considered for rezoning at the time. So it was very inappropriate for me to go on an inspection with him, which he requested. Look, now his land where he proposed this bike track, I said to him I'd be happy for it to go to an information session, and I since had a discussion with staff about the proposal, and I think you'll find if you have a information session, you'll knock this out, because Councillor McLaughlin, this proposal takes people onto the highway, and I don't want kids riding on the highway. We have a bike strategy, and it's linked in with the 3 towns, and we should be getting the grant funding and completing what we propose to do in our current bike strategy. So to take this on, I'd be voting against Councillor Turlin's motion anyway. But I said, look, the best I can do is have an information session. Everyone can see what's being proposed then, and I'm sure it'll be knocked on the head because it's inappropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor, I think it was Halstead, then Whipper. Did you put your hand up then, Councillor Halstead? I thought you put it up.
No, I'm right.
Okay, Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd support the amendment. I get the proponent in, have a discussion, a briefing, but councillors would know that there was a bike strategy that was formulated over many, many years, and that was chaired by Councillor Clark, Jim Clark, who spent a lot of time, and you as well, yeah. So it has been done over a long, long period of time, and I think we need to be consistent with that bike strategy as well. So get the proponent in, hear what they've got to say. If it corresponds with our strategy, good and well. If not, yeah, let's just move on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Yeah, I'll be supporting the amendment. I think at this stage, I mean, the vision is great. And I think the vision at another time when we just, we don't know anything about the costing. We don't know anything about the cost of building it, the licenses that might be needed to run the corridor where it's to go. There is so many issues to look at before we take any further step. And today we had a vision for our walking tracks. There is only so much money the council has, and to bring this forward as a major priority on a whim, I think is not good planning. Yes, I'm prepared to go the next step and have a look at the possibility of a long-term plan for it. It's not going to happen in a matter of a couple of months, as it seems to be indicated. It is a major project, and it's going to cost millions, and we don't have millions, but it could be done somehow in stages, whatever. I don't know as the time goes on. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Councillor Andrews, then Councillor Turl.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I would support the motion providing point 3 was taken out. I don't think we require a workshop. Certainly don't need to involve politicians, our federal members at this stage. I do support point 1 and 2. So if point 3 went away, I would support the motion. Otherwise, I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Could you leave stakeholders in, Councillor Andrews? I think stakeholders and interested parties, you could...
Councillor McLaughlin.
Okay, I'm butting in.
Councillor Turley.
Okay, if I take number 1 out, which is a site visit, that's fine, happy with that. And I'll explain the position of item 3. My understanding is that the proponent has had one of the local members on the whole trail of what he was providing to us 4 weeks ago. And they were very excited and thought that they could actually raise government funds for some of this to happen. So that's the reason why I've got the Goulburn and Wallandilly members involved, because they've actually already been contacted by the proponent for ideas in relation to getting some funding for it. Now, as for the site visit, unless you can actually go and have a look and drive around it, you don't get the scope of the excitement of what could really happen with somebody that's brought that idea to us. Forget the idea about the possibility of land being rezoned. That's another story. This is just a dream from a public person who's come up with an idea, who has multiple kids, who takes his bikes and his kids all around the place riding bikes. And he thought, well, why can't we do it in our shire as well? So he came up with the idea along the rivulet, which is a fantastic idea. And I don't see there's any reason why we can't. He's only given us a 5-minute presentation on Zoom, which you guys can't really get the understanding of how excited he is on the proposal to bring bikes all the way from Berrima, in theory, all the way out to Robertson. Mainly using, and not on the highway, that's not correct about the highway bit. It crosses one major road, Sheepwash Road only, then gets back on the dam wall and rides around the dam wall in Old Sheepwash Road. So it's not, there is no highway crossing. So what I'm trying to do is get somebody who's in the community excited about the proposal and listen to him. As I said, the 2 local members have already been contacted by the proponent with ideas about funding, and they were excited. One has already been on a whole tour with him, which is really good. And if we can connect it into the existing bike strategy, which he has already done, if you look at the proposal that he gave to us 4 weeks ago, he showed that how it connected back into the Bong Bong Common and so on and all the way around. So he's spent a lot of time of his own time to work through how he can connect from Robertson to Berrima in a staged process. Why would we knock back the excitement of a public member? Now, admittedly, the amendment says the same thing, but I think if you get involved, the 2 local members, you might find there's some money to be involved. They might actually provide some cash, even if it's just a scoping study. How good would that be? Leave it to you.
Thank you, Councillor Turland. No other, you had the right of reply. So all in favour of the amendment, please raise your card. Councillors Whipper, Halstead, Andrews, Nelson and Gare. Those in favour of the motion? Against the motion? Against the amendment, I'll get it right. Councillor Scandrett,
There's the motion.
Turland, the amendment now becomes the motion. All in favour of the motion, please raise your card. Councillors Nelson, Andrews, Whipper, McLaughlin, Halstead and Gare and Scandrett. Thank you. Notice of motion, Fire Recovery Centre. I'm going to move from the chair that it be noted.
What are we doing?
The notice of motion via the Resource Recovery Centre, I'm going to move that it be noted.
Well, my recommendation is that the council prepare a report on the fire, the RRC. What's wrong with that? Don't you want a report on it?
I just believe we have worked it to death, and I am just moving that it be noted.
Well,
Yeah, I'll second that.
and I've got a motion in. Mine's the motion. Yours will be the amendment. Well, mine's the amendment now to prepare a report.
It's my motion. You have the right to move an amendment.
I've got that. I said that. Mine
Right.
becomes the amendment now. I just need a seconder for the amendment for a report to be done.
Seconded.
Right,
Seconded.
right.
Now, I've got, can I have a question? Can I have a question first to start?
Yes,
Has this fire cost us any money to date? Either removal of material or an insurance on the machine that was hired in?
Councillor, obviously there have been costs incurred as a result of this fire, yes.
And how much?
I don't have that information. I need to take that on notice. There are a number of insurance claims. One of those has been settled. One is still on foot.
The insurance claim, is it from the neighbour next door who had half his paddocks burnt?
No, there's no claim from any external party. The insurance claims relate to council property.
And the insurance on the machinery that got burnt?
Been made.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Claim has been accepted and that matter has been settled.
So the insurance paid his own insurance, or we had to pay for
So
insurance?
council insurance has paid and that matter has been settled.
So what, $500,000?
I don't have the exact figure, but the matter has been settled for the amount that was claimed.
But the machine's worth $500,000. Is that what it's been settled for?
Thereabouts, yes. I don't know the exact figure, councillor.
Okay. And so the question, next question is, in February, we had a briefing session on it. And I understand that the fire that you mentioned to us started near the fence, near the sale yards. Is that what I understand?
well, that, I can answer that because I was there and that's where it appeared that it was started.
Well, no, that's what was told to us, that you know, Mr. Smiley, your neighbour, actually, you mentioned to him, Mr. Mayor, that you had CCTV camera showing the fire had started from the sale yards.
No,
that's not correct.
that's not correct. I never said that.
A week ago, I spoke to Mr. Smiley and he told me that.
Well, Mr. Smiley, you may want to speak to me because I don't believe I said that. But the CCTV camera that was attached to the wall of the shed showed the fire coming across the earth bank as opposed to, and that was the only CCTV. The CCTV in the sale yards complex does not face that direction. So it couldn't pick up any anything from there. It's
So where
always-
did so that's that where is the fire been confirmed? That's where it started. That's the question.
No, we don't know. It was a catastrophic day. It was 47 degrees. When I got there and I drove around there after about a quarter of an hour because the smoke was so bad with the general manager, there was nobody around there. They, until 5 minutes later when the volunteers came to get the dogs out of the pound, there was nobody that I saw on the premise. And I don't know how they would have been able to start the fire inside the fence, but it appears the fire started on the western side of the bunding closest to the sale yards.
So it's a fire that started not from spontaneous combustion, it started from the fence.
And that's what it appears.
Confirmed by Mr. Paul?
Councillor Turland, I can't definitively tell you how the fire started because I don't know. What we do know is that it appears that it started outside the perimeter of the RRC and came over the back. That much I know from staff accounts on the day. And The CCTV vision that we have is very limited, but it indicates that that's where the fire came from.
Okay, look, the reason now, does anybody have more questions? I'll just start the debate then if I can after that.
Councillor Halstead?
Yeah, look, I know absolutely nothing about this fire, so I don't pretend to know anything about it, but it seems to me there shouldn't be any objection to the request that's been made here that a report be done. It seems to me that Barry Paul might have some of the information and maybe others have the remainder. I don't know, but it seems to me to be a pretty straightforward request. And you know, why on earth we need to go into a great big debate on this, I don't know. We need to find out the facts.
But I'll withdraw and have a briefing session because it appears that there seems to be some underlying reason that something, I don't know, something's been done that shouldn't have been done or whatever. But I gave a full-scale briefing to council in relation to this back in February, a couple of weeks after it started. And, you know, there were seven appliances on site. The SES, the fire rescue were the first ones there after the Mossvale Fire Brigade came in. There was water shortage, pressure. They took water from the Sale Yards hydrant and ran it over there. There were ambulance vehicles there. The dogs were removed after took about 20 minutes to remove. Fire could have destroyed the shed, but for the quick actions of staff of removing all the books facing the western wall, that the fire virtually turned red hot. But, you know, it's an issue that was dealt with, and I just don't know why councils need a full-blown report when I'll go for a briefing session.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to speak.
I've got a question.
Well, Councillor Nelson, I think you've finished. I'll give Councillor Nelson the right to speak. Councillor Nelson.
Well, are we in debate or are we asking questions?
Well, yeah.
I mean, we've just had the Spanish Inquisition, so we may as well keep it going.
Yeah, we're in debate.
I have a question, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Scanlon.
Yes, Mr Mayor. The previous fire at the RRC, could Mr Paul just explain how the cause of what was the cause of that, please?
Well, again, Councillor Scandra, that would be speculation. You're talking about 2017, I believe. The most volatile green waste material is not the shredded organic matter that people suggest that it is. The most volatile green waste out there generally is the raw green waste that comes in, because often it's contaminated. Often people put things in their green bins that they're not supposed to, like woolly rags and ashes out of the stove and all sorts of things. So that's time as we've had the opportunity to inspect and then process and, where necessary, pick out of that. It's the most volatile and also has the most oxygen available to it. My memory serves me correctly. I need to get back and check some records or some emails. Understanding is we believe that may, and emphasise may, have occurred in the raw green.
Thank you, Mr Paul. And the guidelines that are widely circulated, I think I've seen some that specify 6 metre separation between buns of no higher than 2 metres of unprocessed material prior to processing. Do we follow those guidelines, or which guidelines do you follow?
Andrew, some of the things you just quoted there are inaccurate. There are guidelines. We comply with all of those. We're well within the limits.
For unprocessed and processed.
Councillor, we comply with all of those requirements. The only other thing I will say to you, and council was made aware of this, we were in the middle of a bushfire prior to that fire.
Precisely.
The days prior to that fire, we got absolutely smashed by the general public cleaning out their backyard in the northern villages and other parts of the Shire. where we had in one day 790 vehicles through the Resource Recovery Centre. Probably 85 to 90% of those vehicles brought in green waste. Because we were in a bushfire situation, we were unable to get contractors down here to remove any of that material. So that presented some challenges. But that said, we were still within compliance in terms of our licence and in terms of the requirements that we have to manage how we process organics.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I look forward to the briefing.
Despite what is being speculated in the media.
All right. So the councillor Turtle, the question.
No questions. I'm ready to debate if I can for 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I will.
3, I hope.
I'm going to change my recommendation that a briefing session be held for councillors.
Yep, and I support that, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Councillor Turtle.
Okay, look, all I'm asking for is a report, which is the same as a briefing session, but in writing. I don't know what the problem is, that you don't want it in writing, so there's no statement. Now, I'll give you the reason why I put this motion forward. And it is clear and simple. This council failed to do a submission to the New South Wales Bushfire Inquiry. This could have been the opportunity to show other councils not to fall in the same trap that this council has fallen into in collecting green waste on a day that had 40-degree temperatures with a machine that we couldn't use because it was hired in on the 4th of January, the same day that we lost 30 properties in the southern villages with a southwesterly wind. Now, the RRC is less than 500 metres from residential houses. Half the paddock to the neighbour on the south got burnt. Fire engines were there, as you said, 7. It went on for 5 or 6 weeks. The issue about this is we need a report so that we know it won't happen again. But more importantly, if we had bothered to put a submission in, this would have highlighted other councils not to fall in the same trap that we have fallen into twice. Not once, twice. This one, if it was lit, as been told, over the fence, that's fine. But that's not the issue. The issue is we could have and should have put a submission in which will help other shires potentially not fall into the same trap that we've fallen into because we didn't bother. And it's none in our submissions that we put in because we used the Royal Commission submission into the New South Wales Bushfire Inquiry, which is irrelevant in relation to this issue, fires. We could have had a disaster of Moss Vale burnt down because of the situation and we didn't follow protocol. If we did, that's good. But what I'm saying is we need to relook at it so we don't fall into the same trap next year and the year after. That is the reason why this is here. But all you guys want to do is have a briefing session. Now, if it was in a full submission that went to the New South Wales Bushfire Inquiry, we can actually help other councils not to fall into the same trap and not us to fall in the same trap next year. But you just want a briefing session. If we had a submission, we could have read the submission. But no, we don't have it. We have nothing. We have all verbal comments. At this point in time, that is the reason why this motion is there, for a detailed report so we can see and make sure it doesn't happen again. Now, we know that we had the report in February, the verbal report, and I put a motion forward or question with notice back in February, and Mr. Paul asked me to remove it, and I did remove it because
I think I will correct you. It has nothing to do with a submission.
it has everything to do with the submission.
Councillor wish to speak.
Absolutely.
Councillor, I think Councillor
Scandrett.
had his hand up. The second, Councillor Nelson.
You probably want to go for and against, so I'd suggest Nelson.
I've given you the floor, Councillor Scandrett.
Right. Well, I totally think it is in relation to the bushfire inquiry. The Moss Vale was at risk. We have to remember that. Had conditions deteriorated, Moss Vale could have been lost. So this Councillor, Mr. Mayor, You were there. You saw how bad it was. And a lot of us have photos of how the fire was going and the smoke. It was on fire. And had those winds gone against us, we would have been powerless to defend it. It could have gone straight through the town. So I think we need to learn from this. And the way to do that is to have a report, a considered report.
Thank you, councillor Scandra. Councillor Nelson.
Look, Mr Mayor, I'll support a information session on it. We have information sessions at the drop of a hat, so I don't see why we can't have another one here, because I can't see how Mr Paul's going to write a report that's going to answer all those hundreds of questions that Councillor Turlin just put there. It was like having the Spanish Inquisition. So I think an information session will clear the air, and if we need a report after that, so be it. But from the previous information session that we had, there was a raging bushfire going on at the time. Council's RRC was being inundated with green waste from the northern villages because they were all wanted to get rid of their green waste. And where were they taking it? To the RRC. So all the waste was in raw form, which makes it more volatile. And if there's any contaminants in the raw waste, then that could cause a fire. Because the RRC was under the pump from the green waste, it couldn't undertake the necessary breakdown that it usually does. Also, Mr Mayor, contractors wouldn't come down to collect the green waste because the bushfire was on. Thus, the RRC had more green waste than normal. So if you join the dots together, that's what happens. You know, everyone's great with hindsight, and Mossvale could burn down in hindsight, but, you know, let's get they're the facts that I've just put to you from the first information session. So let's have another information session and let's see if we do need a report after that.
Okay, so I will put the amendment that has been moved by Councillor Turlin, seconded by Councillor Halstead. All in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Halstead, Scandrett, Whipper, Turlin and Scandrett. Those against? Those against, yes, goes against. So Councillors Nelson, Gare and Andrews. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2,
No, 3.
4. So I'll use my casting vote in the...
Mr Mayor, can we just have a revote on that, please? Because Councillor Andrews had up a card that might have been back to front. I don't know.
Okay, I will put the vote again. All those in favour of the
How's that,
amendment,
Mr Scandrett?
put your vote up.
The amendment.
Oh, the amendment.
Thank you very much. You got it wrong again. Here we go. The amendment.
Thank
Oh,
you.
good on you.
Favour of the amendment. Councillors Scandrett, Whipper, Turlin and Halstead. Those against.
Right, it's clearer.
Councillors Andrew, Nelson, McLaughlin and myself. So I've got it right the first time. It is 4-4. I'll use my casting vote in favour of the lost and declare the amendment now becomes the motion. No, those in favour of the motion. Councillors Whipper, Nelson, Andrews, Gare and McLaughlin. Those against? Councillors Scandrett, Turlin and Halstead. The amendment now becomes the motion. No, motion is carried. So we now move on. Environment and Sustainability Committee minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just moving this motion, if I do have a seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Just to formalise, I think the motion that was put to council some time ago, and the minutes from the Environment Sustainability Committee were upheld at the council meeting. I just wanted to point out that in terms of the first point, Extinction Rebellion, and council would remember that Extinction Rebellion did come and make a presentation to the council in regard to climate change and our climate change declaration. Since then, a lot of local environmentalists have come together, and they've agreed that probably Win Zero is the appropriate conduit to move forward with this this partnership and this climate declaration, climate change declaration as well. And that's fully support. Well, it's almost unanimously supported by all the members of Extinction Rebellion. And the fact being that Win Zero is rebadged, the rebadged name of CanWin. And councillors, I would assume, would know that CanWin has put a very solid environmental footprint on the ground over many, many years. They've got a lot of expertise in this area as well. And I think the time has come for us, given that we've got an extension now of an additional year for this council term, to put a working group, an expert panel in place under the umbrella of the Environment Sustainability Committee, so that we can start moving forward. I think if we delay too much longer, we'll lose the precious opportunity to actually implement even more than council are doing at the moment. It was interesting hearing the debate previously, because those catastrophic events will continue and the planet will continue to heat up. There's no doubt about that. And for a lot of the environmentalists out there, that the Canary's been singing for well over 40 years that this has been on the way. All the signs have been there, and here we are in the middle of it. I think we have to assume some responsibility, and council have done that by endorsing a climate change declaration. So I think the next obvious step is to move forward, to put a panel together under the auspices of the Environment Sustainability Committee for this last term of council, and bring those recommendations from that expert panel through that process. So I'm asking councillors that you support this recommendation, and that we call for expressions of interest for that panel and start moving forward so that the community will realise our commitment and support for the climate change declaration that we've endorsed.
Councillor Whipper, can I ask a suggestion? You may say nay. Would it be best that we as a council, and we haven't met as a council to consider this, but in the first interest, you have point 4, that expressions of interest be called for the establishment of the Climate Change Advisory Panel.
Yeah.
Maybe I wonder whether councillors would like to have an input who should be on it, that we have a criteria for that panel with various expertise, so we know who we are going out to the community to, and we as a council set that parameters initially, and above 1, 2, and 3 be fine. But I'm just wondering whether we should set the parameters for.
If I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor, none of us around the table are climate experts, and I don't think it's up to us to set the terms of reference. I think our Environment Sustainability branch could certainly, along with CanWin, put something together that would meet the needs of this panel. ultimately, it'll be up to council to endorse any of those recommendations or suggestions that come back anyway. But I think the longer we delay this, the more peril that we are seeing in the community as just gas bagging about our commitment rather than doing something about it. So I think it would be appropriate for those terms of reference to be developed by the Environment and Sustainability Branch. I did call an extraordinary meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Committee the other day just to get their feeling on this motion, and it was endorsed by the committee as well. So I think this is the way forward. Ultimately, councillors will have the final say, but I think we should go ahead with it as it's written, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, another question, because I mean, we are forming a committee of council. The other question is expression of interest to be called. How are you're going to use the sustainability or the environmental branch to lay down the criteria or
Terms of reference for the
terms of reference and whatever. When you haven't got a closing date for, it's sort of open-ended. You haven't got that it be, interest be expressed by the end of September or the beginning of August or end of August.
Well, in the motion there, Mr. Mayor, I was hoping that this working group, and it is a subcommittee of the Environment and Sustainability Committee. It's not a new committee; it's a working group of the Environment and Sustainability Committee. And I was hoping that it would be operational by September of this year. So if it's endorsed tonight, obviously we'd be going out ASAP to the community for those expressions of interest to come in. And it would be, in my opinion, every other process where the chair of the committee would appoint members to the committee along with the mayor and the general manager. That would be the process for endorsement.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Other councillors? I'm going to take questions to Councillor Whipper because, I mean, it is a big topic. So if any other councillors have questions that they would like directed to staff before we debate it, actually. No? Councillor Nelson, you had your hand up.
I was going to go to debate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, questions, Councillor McLaughlin.
Councillor Whipper, I did forward an email to you with regard to reduction in our carbon footprint to do with cycling and so forth. But you might have a look at that, and that might be something that you can take forward, because I think that's a big one, and it would add significantly to reducing. You want to show what we're doing. That's one way of doing. It's got to be ground truth to see if our engineers come back and say, well, if other councils are doing it, and we can show a benefit to our community, not only in more bike tracks, but less carbon. I mean, I worked in the cement industry. It's a good use for concrete, but not necessarily in steel and concrete going into footpaths that have got a massive carbon footprint.
The answer to that question, Councillor McLaughlin, is that yes, that panel would be very diverse. It wouldn't be all just to do with energy. We've got things like water as well.
Yep.
So yeah, and reduction in, carbon fuel and all of that. So it would be a diverse committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, then we open it up to debate. Councillor McLaughlin.
Oh, no,
Councillor Nelson. You've just done. Yeah, Councillor Nelson. Nelson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, initially I thought you were going to ask if we could have an information session on this, but I'm glad you didn't. I actually rang Councillor Whipper to clarify a couple of points in his motion, and I'm satisfied with that. And Councillor Whipper's been onto this type of thing now for a number of years and been involved with the Environment Committee, I think ever since ever since it was developed. So I think this is an opportunity for us to get on with the job. and adopt this. And I think under Council Whipper's leadership, I think this will move forward quite well. And I think, Mr Mayor, if you just meet with Councillor Whipper and sort out the finer points, that should be satisfactory. So I'll support it.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. And Councillor Whipper had one hiccup for 12 months in relation to the environment.
Yeah, that's right. You learned a lot in that year, didn't you?
Oh, good comeback. Councillor Turley.
Yeah, Councillor Whipper, you've done a good job again. I remember going back past meetings that, you know, the climate emergency was actually voted down by the Mayor and then voted for it at the second time it came back. I noted, and I commend Councillor Andrews for his stand that what he believes, he puts his hand up for and keeps that commitment. So Councillor Andrews, as I said to you before, I commend you for your stand the way that you feel that you should vote. But I have a different opinion. I think we've always had a climate emergency coming down our throat for many years, and to protect our children and grandchildren and beyond, we need to be more forthcoming, which is where Councillor Whipper is taking this motion forward. Win Zero was also named by another group before they changed to Win Zero. What was the name, Councillor Whipper?
Can Win?
Can Win, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember. I knew it had something close to what was there. And I think by memory, they were the ones that wanted to do the solar panels out at the Kawarra Railway Station.
The advocates for that.
Yeah, that's it. That's very good for non-for-profit. And they were going to sell it back. Anyway, that's another story. We'll go there another day. So look, good move. I think it's great. And it's just a shame that with COVID-19, we're all doing things on Zoom and we actually can't actually get the people involved, physically involved. We've all got to do this with hands off. And it's a little bit frustrating to actually see the emotion in people's faces that they want to get excited in, but you can't see them and can't get them totally involved because of social distancing. But anyway, I think it's a good move, and I think you've always been the number one advocate for this sort of process, you and Councillor Markwood. It's a shame he's not here tonight. I'm sure he'd be jumping out of his skin for it. I'm sure he's watching what's happening tonight, but no, good. And I just hope from now on there'll be no negativity that comes back in again and again through some parties in our shire. Good on you. Good move.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if there's any further need for further debate. So I put the recommendation as moved by councillors Whipper and who else? Nelson. I'll put that all in favour. Councillors Nelson, Scandred, Whipper, Andrews, unanimous. Okay.
Councillors.
That was a good win, Councillor Whipper.
Very good.
18.5, notice of motion settlement of Lot 3 Franklin Street. I don't know what this is all about. Councillor Turley.
Yeah, look, just bring back a report in relation to the transaction that took place in relation to the first settlement of the first block of land on Franklin Street. There seemed to be some controversy there of the stamp duty that was paid and not paid on the GST, and the time it took to correct the problem because of COVID-19. The stamp duty office wasn't open. This is just to inform councils of the whole process that went on, and with COVID-19, how hard it is to try and deal with government bodies when there's nobody there, which, from what I understand from the email that we've actually received to, as it says in there, the General Manager, the Deputy General, the Councillor, the Mayor and myself, it was clear that the intent was to settle on the date, but it was impossible because they couldn't correct the stamp duty payment because nobody was at the office of COVID-19. It took weeks for that to be resolved. They knew about the problem, they tried to resolve it, and from what I understand, the money was in the bank from Willow Properties, but they couldn't correct the stamp duty, so therefore they couldn't do through the electronic transfer the final payment because of the stamp duty was wrong on the GST. Now, this was just to explain the problems that we are facing in a COVID-19 world, but what we ended up doing was charging a late payment fee and threatening
That's not wrong.
damages.
Incorrect.
Don't threaten anybody.
There's no threatening done by.
A notice of complete is threatening in relation to what I would think when you're trying to solve a problem and not being able to solve it because of the stamp duty office not being available to talk to. That is threatening. Notice of complete and damages. So that, to me, instead of taking a little bit more of a light attitude to it, that's what should have happened. So what I'm asking is a simple report to come back so councillors all understand the issues that we face in the COVID-19 world. Mistakes get made, but you can't ring somebody. You can't get into some government departments to try and correct a simple mistake that was found out and was tried to be fixed, but the computer system wouldn't allow it to be transferred because there was nobody to speak to. That was the issue.
And it'll be done and open.
Okay, that's no worries there. It'll be done. Councillor McLaughlin.
I was going to tongue in cheek saying, do we need an information session? But I was wondering, I spoke to Mr. Mooney about this. I was wondering if we couldn't just give a response now. Maybe we don't need a report. Is it possible?
It'll be
in a report. Okay, then I'm happy with that.
Right.
And other things might come out of it. Councillor Nelson.
Here we go again, Mr. Mayor. Another report, another notice of motion, another report. Look, all we've done here is we've directed the staff.
Hold up, we need a seconder. Who's going to second?
I'll second it.
No, don't second it.
I'll second it.
I'm not even going to vote for it.
Councillor Nelson.
Mr. Mayor, all the council has done is enforce the contract. I remember that council directed the staff to enforce the contract. If council have done anything wrong, then the purchaser can pursue through appropriate legal action. I take it that we haven't been served with any papers recently.
No.
I think, no, we haven't. I think that you'll find that the purchaser or the staff working for him did not take appropriate action to comply with the contract and got caught out. I think it's unnecessary and a waste of council resources that we should vote this down. Look, I'm not even going to move an amendment for an information session on this. Just let's see if the purchaser is prepared to take legal action for council enforcing the contract, or he realises that he's made the mistake and he should move on. So vote it down, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All we need to do is get on with this and move it. Already we've heard the staff say they're happy to do a report. It seems to me a brief report's all that's required. It's all very well for Councillor Nelson to jump up and down and talk about a verbal, but sometimes you need to put pen to paper, believe it or not. And I think this is a case where a minimal report is all that's required. No one should be, quite frank, getting up anybody, whether it's the purchaser or the council. No one's suggesting any wrong behaviour here or lack of process. I mean, just let the staff get on, do a minimal report, and then we note it. My God, we certainly don't need another information session. I'm sick of them already.
Councillor Halstead. Yeah, look, I'll support it because I know what happened, and there won't be any, as Councillor Halstead and Nelson have sort of inferred, there's nothing for council to hide or council to be embarrassed about. So let's bring it on and make it short, make it sweet, and note it and get on. Councillor Turl.
Look, this is not, nobody's trying to blame anybody here. It's just trying to reinforce the issues of COVID that is causing problems in the real world. What we used to do, we can't do now. Maybe Councillor Nelson doesn't understand what I was trying to explain. He admits he made a mistake. He tried to correct the mistake. The money was in council's bank account, but he couldn't settle because of the figure was wrong on the GST, didn't have the stamp duty payment. This is just trying to explain the problems that the world is facing under COVID. I'm not trying to blame anybody, Councillor Nelson. You need to understand this is what the problems are. But to put a penalty notice on him and to do a notice of complete, knowing that he was desperately trying to correct the problem that he couldn't correct because of COVID. That's what I think you misunderstand. I'm not blaming anybody. It's, would you not just take a breath, a lenient step back? He made it quite clear. He was telling everybody there was a problem. He was trying to correct it. That's all good. I'm not trying to blame anybody here, Councillor Nelson. I'm trying to explain to you what happens in the real world now. COVID is causing problems. And he tried to, but nobody would speak to him at the stamp duty's office to correct the amount. Nobody. And it took days to try and get somebody to take control of it so he could pay the difference. He wasn't trying to walk away. He wasn't trying to squeeze money out of anybody. He was trying to do the right thing. But he couldn't settle under the PEXA, the computer system, because the figure was wrong. And he admits he made the mistake. He wasn't trying to bow out of it or hide. I'm not trying to blame council staff. I'm just trying to get you to understand the problems. And council could have taken a step back and said, well, you're trying damn hard to fix it. Get it fixed as soon as you can. They all knew what was going on.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Yeah, I think a report, I think it might clear up a lot of inaccuracies that have been said tonight. So I put the recommendation as moved by Councillor and seconded by Councillor Halstead.
I thought I seconded it, Mr. Mayor.
You did. I thought Councillor Halstead.
Oh, well, it's all right. I don't know. Fine.
Okay, Councillor Scandrett, Whipper, McLaughlin, Gare, Halstead, and Andrews.
Yeah.
And
Nelson.
And Nelson. Oh, and
Yes, Councillor Turlin convinced me.
That's the way.
That's the first.
Nation Street upgrade 18.6, notice of motion. Councillor Halstead.
Look, it's pretty straightforward. I don't want to debate, and I certainly don't want to be getting involved in all the sort of diatribe that's gone on with the previous ones. It's straightforward. It's a report. My God, I sent an email in November 2019 to the staff, which I don't think I got a reply. It doesn't matter. Who cares? I just want an update on what's going on so that we've absolutely complied, or will have in due course, complied with the requirements of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act, the Environmental Planning Assessment Regulation. Now, in terms of the last line, pretty straightforward. Is the council going to put that on exhibition or not? Quite frank, that's in the court of whoever's going to write the report. But I don't want to get involved in debate. It's straightforward.
Can I second the recommendation, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Second, Councillor Whipper. Okay, no debate.
No.
Councillor Andrews.
Oh, here we go.
Councillor Andrews. You're muted, Councillor Andrews.
If it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask for a clarification, please, from Mr. Paul?
Yes.
All I'm suggesting, I've heard this has been requested on 2 other occasions, and the answer is given. And I believe that the last point here from Councillor Halstead's notice of motion is asking when a review of the REF will go on public exhibition. I believe that's not required. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no legal requirement for the REF to be exhibited, no.
Thank you.
Well, can I just say, Mr. Mayor, I'm not inferring one way or the other. And it's pretty straightforward what's in my request. Barry's answered that, but I want it in a report.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I can elaborate. I mean, I can tell you, Council, at this point in time, there is no proposal to exhibit the REF unless the council directs so.
Mr. Mayor, I want this motion put.
That's right.
Okay.
I don't want debate.
Well, well, you might want it.
Right, Councillor Turlin.
I'll read you a letter It's the 15th, 13th of May from Infrastructure New South Wales, New South Wales Infrastructure. It says infrastructure is continue liaise with Wingecarribee Shire to monitor the delivery of the project. With reference to any changes of the project, please be advised that no scope changes have been approved to date by Infrastructure New South Wales. This is on the 13th of May 2020. Infrastructure New South Wales has been informed of the development of the MOU to agree the design and the transfer of requirements of the transport of the property. Until the consultation of the MOU has been finalised, any changes required are known, no impact on the deed scope can be determined. Wingecarribee Shire has also advised that the REF document is being developed with a consultation process to be undertaken by stakeholders. Council is not the stakeholder, the community is. There's a letter on the 13th of May that's saying that you will, from council to Infrastructure New South Wales, saying that you will be undertaking the REF document with stakeholders. It cannot be in-house, it has to go out to the public. Now, if you haven't got a copy of this letter, I will forward it on to you so that you can see what you have written to the Infrastructure New South Wales and what Infrastructure New South Wales have written back.
Just to correct, that is their opinion.
The consultation, Mr Mayor, with the stakeholders, we're talking about Sydney Trains, we're talking about Infrastructure New South Wales, we're talking about ARTC, and we're talking about any other regulatory bodies that we need to engage with in regard to the REF.
Well, stakeholders to me is the public.
You're wrong.
Staff to be involved in a debate, right? You are making comment to staff. They should have the right, when comments have been made, to answer back. But I don't like it, because when false statements are made and they don't have the right to correct it, the public may believe it. So, if there is no amendment, then I would just ask that all in favour of the recommendation put up their hand with their card. Councillor Whipper, Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Turlin, Councillor Halstead. Those against? Councillor Nelson, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Gare, Councillor McLaughlin. You didn't vote, so you're not voting.
Oh, I did vote.
Yeah, so it's in the negative.
Okay.
What did you vote for, Councillor McLaughlin?
I voted.
Voted for what?
I voted earlier on. You didn't see me hold the card up.
No,
So you
voted for the motion
again?
I will ask for those in favour of the recommendation, raise your hand. Councillors Whipper, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Turlin, Councillor Halstead, Councillor Scandrett. I declare the motion carried.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Well, those against? Councillors Andrews and Gare. The motion is carried, and we move on to 18.7, road closure, part of Street Mittagong. Okay, Councillor Turl.
Well, I need a second first before we can go any further.
No, I'm happy to second.
Okay, look, we've had the briefing sessions from the gentleman, I can't remember his name at the moment, on 2 occasions now.
Yep.
And it seems to be there a comparative difference between the council's valuation and the 2 valuations that this gentleman has got. So what we have, the situation is that there's an extraordinary amount of difference between the two valuations, or 3 valuations, 2 around 10 grand and 1 around 50 or 60 grand, I think, by memory, from staff. The extraordinary thing is here, when you look at what other areas of where land has been sold of unnamed roads, it's around the same figure as the 2 $10,000 fees that have been proposed to date. And so what I don't understand is why there's been a standoff. The reason why I bought this is because the owner of the property who wants to buy this bit of land, as he said, he's been there for 4 years, but it's been now there for 20 years. The road through his driveway goes through the land. And it's just to try and bring a resident who has got a problem, who can't go anywhere to speak to anybody. Mr. Mayor, you didn't meet with him yesterday when you said you were, so that's one of the reasons why, you know, he just needed to have somebody to talk to. Now, what you have is a staff member has a point of view, which is good, and then you have he has a point of view. What I'm trying to do here is become the mediator in between the parties so we can get a resolution. The money does not go to council. This money goes to the government.
Correct, Councillor Turley. I will ask council staff to clarify who is the recipient of any monies paid.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Mr. Mooney to respond.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, the road, in terms of its formation, would result in the proceeds from the sale being returned to council. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an unnamed road with no road in it. There's no driveway, there's no gravel, there's nothing.
Response from council staff who have researched it.
Well, the last communications we had with staffers was that only if the road is formed, it becomes council's.
That's the last communication.
Councillor Turland, you can make that statement. Staff have clarified the situation. It's whether you accept it or not, but council are the recipient of the funds.
So there's a different rate, it would seem, if council gets the funds. And now it's been clarified that 2 weeks ago, we weren't getting the funds. It was actually going towards the state government. Now listen, stop cutting in it as I'm debating, please. If you want to correct after the opinion.
Yeah, well, that's a point of order.
It's not a point of order unless you bring up a point of order.
No, the point of order is that you are not allowed to make statements that are false.
It is not false if you go back to the tape of 2 weeks ago. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, you have got it wrong again.
No, I don't. Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Keep going, Councillor Turland.
Now, all this was to try and resolve an issue between the parties, to try and determine where a reasonable situation could be resolved between them. At the moment, the driveway goes through the land and has done for 20 years. Now, I will go back and I will watch the tape of what was said 2 weeks ago. But what I understand, I believe I'm correct. If I'm wrong, I'll apologise to Mr. Mooney. But at this stage, I believe that's what was informed to us 2 weeks ago. Now, all it is, what is reasonable? And there's a huge difference between the parties. He can't build on it. It's just extending the paddock, which he's had use for 20 years. It goes nowhere. So we have two different opinions. Now, either he does nothing and still mows it, which he has done for the last 20 years, or 4 years him, or he doesn't, he just sits there. He's just trying to clean the deal up, like other people have done, of which we've accepted their monies for unnamed and unproduced roads. To me, it's got out of control. And as for your question about you cutting out notice of motions and questions with notice, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually bringing a problem that the community ratepayer has to the table to try and get some resolution. Exactly what we were trying to do as councillors. And if you look at tonight's motions, there is only one new motion. The rest are previous, 2 weeks old. This one should have been dealt with 4 weeks ago.
3 minutes. Oh, there's only 3 minutes long, truly.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've got some sympathy for this gentleman. The amount of money that he's spent so far to with regard to this, I think what Councillor Turlin's asking for is not untoward at all. He's just asking for a response to have a look at the valuations. I don't see any reason why we can't have another look at that. It sounds like it's, I can't see the wide difference between the valuations. And I guess if it can't be subdivided, it can't build on it again, it has just a minimal value. And I don't know why it seems to have been such an excessive charge. So that's why I've supported and seconded this motion, notice of motion. Thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I think response means report, another one. I'd like to say bring it on, Mr Mayor. I listened to what Mr Mooney said at the last meeting. I've had a little bit to do with property matters in my 15 years on council. And you know what, Mr Mayor? Whenever the applicant complains about the price, you find he's usually wrong. So if I'm wrong, I'll apologise, but bring on a report. It really is an operational matter. It shouldn't be coming to council like this, and it should be dealt that way as an operational matter. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I'm not, the difference in the valuation to the of the parties is about 40, how many $1,000?
That'll all be in the report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it's going to be in the report. I will say this. I would love to buy 5 acres of land in this shire in a prime area of the shire for $40,000. How many? Three-quarters of an acre. I would love to be able to do it.
Big difference, 5 acres and 3/4.
This is ratepayers' money.
Now, there's a history to this, and when the road was proposed to be closed, it was, I'd like to know the previous owner, who I think came to council about 17 years ago, and council made him remove gates that had been placed across the road, and he was trying to get ownership of the road by placing gates over.
By default.
And yes, by default. So council said, no, we are not going to sell this piece of land. And I think I even moved the recommendation when Councillor Howsett was in the chair, because it came to council, I'm sure, that it be sold. But when there is a payment that is required to purchase land, and I'm sorry, but I have a belief, I think Councillor Nelson's right. I'm happy to meet with the applicant. I couldn't do it yesterday and I set up that meeting. But on the first instance now, let's get it on the table, get it over and done with, another report for our senior staff, and get it back on the table for a resolution. So, if that be the case, I will put the recommendation. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to speak if possible, Mr Mayor.
Yes, you've got the floor.
Look, I agree. I think pretty well with what you and Councillor Nelson said. What we have to be careful of is that we're not, disposing of a piece of property for a peppercorn, if you like, compared with what the real value should be. So I'm a bit concerned about this sort of proceeding to the point where it's going to be sold as a result of pressure being applied. I'm very concerned about this, as I am about any sale of land. So I don't know what your reference was before, whether that was trying to implicate me in some sort of decision. I think you were just suggesting I was in the chair at the time you moved something. Well,
that's right.
That might well be the case, but in any event, I'm very concerned about this being sold at a rate which I think is far less than what it should be sold at.
Yeah, well, good on you, councillor Halstead. Councillor, do we need any right to reply, or can we just vote on it? Councillor Turlin, you have your right of reply.
I think it's only around about 3/4 of an acre of the land, which is the strip of the road. So it's not 5 acres. He's already got 5 acres. It's only, and he can't build on it if you look at the valuations.
No, I
And I can't, is somebody cutting in on me?
No, I said, you said he can't build on it. I said, yes, I know he can't build on it. That's been said.
He can build on, he can build a shed on.
Oh, well, he can't build a house on it.
Ten store or whatever else.
Councillor Turlin.
Okay, if we all stop now so I can finish? Is it all, if we're all had enough now, can I finish?
Turlin.
Thank you. It's 3/4 of an acre of a road strip. It's been there, it's an unmade road at this point in time. The driveway's been going through 40 years. All that needs to be done was to get a resolution between the parties so it can be resolved and off the table. The reason why he came to me is because he couldn't move any further forward with staff at the time, and that's fine. Staff have the right to do what they need to do. But all I do is, as we all do, represent the community, which this guy is a ratepayer. And all I did was just to try and bring it to the table. And he tried to meet with you, Mr. Mayor, and okay, you didn't meet with him yesterday, but it's a shame because it could have been resolved yesterday and wiped out today. But it's not. And the rate per square metre on previous roads that have been sold is $2.94 a square metre. This is $9.13 a square metre. Now, this is simple mathematics on a valuation. And if the valuer believes it's a building block that you can build a house on, it probably is $9.13 a square metre. But when it's only extending a paddock on his 5 acres, you think he's going to build a house up there? He can't. I mean, it's extraordinary. He tried to gipper information around the Shire of what the rate is, and that's what he's got back from previous sales. You're fine. Do your vote. End of conversation.
Okay, again, it will be good to get a report back and to get the correct information as opposed to what is bandied around as false information. All in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous. Right. I need a recommendation to go into close.
Move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Move
Second.
Councillor Nelson, all in favour?
Aye.
Carried. All right, so thank you to the members of the public who have been attuned to this absolutely unabridged version of a council meeting. And thank you all very much for your attendance. We will see you at the next meeting.